Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode 96 of ThROH The Years, the podcast that reviews Ring of Honor show by show from the beginning. My name is Trevor Dame, joined as always by the other voice you will hear, Matt Feuerstein. As always, you will hear Matt Feuerstein. You will never not hear Matt Feuerstein. In your darkest hour, you will hear Matt Feuerstein in your mind.
Definitely that would be anyone's darkest hour, I have to admit.
Come on.
Including my own. Yeah, that's really dark, Trevor. I feel like almost you're going to scare the listeners away by how bleak of a picture that you're painting of life on Earth.
Matt, there are plenty of people that listen to us by choice while they're at work. Well, we had one nice person that said they said something very nice in recent months about helping them through stuff or just, being a comfort to people. You are a comfort to people, Matt. We've had multiple people say that, this is the nice comforting thing. You are a comfort, Matt. You better learn to accept it.
Speak for yourself, man.
You strive to just annoy, but you fail. That's the one thing you fail at, Matt Feuerstein. but as always, just the usual, plug the feeds. That's the one thing we have to plug. We got 3 different ways to listen. You can listen to us on YouTube, which it's one of the weird perks of doing this is seeing every month getting that one YouTube email that's another few people are watching on YouTube. This is really weird because we don't do a video podcast. It is literally just listening to us in a less convenient way. But
you know that if you have the YouTube app and you have YouTube Plus, you can just listen to audio on the YouTube video in the background on your phone.
Who gets YouTube Premium, Matt? Only psychopaths. Apologies to anyone listening that gets YouTube Premium.
I might get YouTube Premium.
But yeah, so we have the YouTube feed, we have the ThROH The Years feed, and we are still on the Pro Wrestling Only Podcast Network, which has an extensive archive of shows that aren't us that are great. I've gotten to the point where we've been doing this so long. I can say I grew up listening. Well, maybe I wasn't listening when I was that young, but I spent years of my life listening to shows on that network. So if you want to see things that informed me, go dig through the archives. That brings us to the news that we cover between shows, as always, between the shows that we are covering. So just 2 or 3 little bits here, Matt. First thing is the Pro Wrestling Torch. Ring of Honor has announced that Bryan Danielson will be moving to Philadelphia to become the head trainer of the Ring of Honor Wrestling School soon. Ring of Honor is also claiming that Austin Aries, who's the current head trainer at the ROH Wrestling School, will remain a big part of Ring of Honor. PW Torch has learned the reason Aries is leaving the Ring of Honor Wrestling School is to take more bookings overseas, especially in Japan. In the past, Aries had to turn down several offers to wrestle overseas due to his commitments to the Ring of Honor Wrestling School. Several Ring of Honor wrestlers, including Alex Shelley, Bryan Danielson, and Colt Cabana, have taken bookings overseas and found themselves to be more valuable commodities on the independent scene as a result of learning different styles of wrestling that would not otherwise be exposed to wrestling the majority of time in the U.S. Aries will still assist with training students at the Ring of Honor Wrestling School as time permits. So yeah, this was the big changeover, time where this was a time period where Danielson, was the trainer. I think he's talked about at the time that he's talked in the past where he doesn't see himself as a good trainer. Looking back at this time, that he's not good at I think the way he's put in the past is something to the effect of he can teach stuff, but he's not good at motivating guys. He was just kind of if they're not coming to me I want to learn this, he's not kind of a rah this is what you need to do, this is how to be a wrestler kind of completist like that, I imagine.
I mean, I don't always trust Bryan Danielson when he says he's not good at something, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
But, teaching, there's a lot of components to it besides just knowing the skills that you're trying to impart on people. But I don't know. I bet you he's better than he thinks he is.
And I've said this before, I believe, on the show one time, but I've almost never in my life really wanted to be a pro wrestler. This is the one time in my life where 5% of me consider it because Bryan Danielson was my favorite wrestler. Ring of Honor was my favorite promotion. And I was I don't know, maybe I should save up some money and go to Philadelphia. But then I realized I'm a decent sized person in terms of I'm 6'2". I am not a good athlete, but I'm not a terrible athlete. But Matt, my Achilles heel is I am terrified of pain and terrified of ever requiring a surgery. And so the idea that like, oh, if I became a wrestler, almost certainly one day I would get injured and almost certainly one day I would need to go under the knife. And that was like, well, you know what? I'm just going to stay at home and eat Doritos.
Well, staying home and eating Doritos in the long run also kind of dangerous. Yeah. And might also require a much more intense surgery, in fact.
Matt, I do the Doritos in moderation, maybe once every 6 weeks at this point. But
okay, well, the way you made it sound was like, okay, I'm just, instead of going to do anything, I'm just going to stay home and eat Doritos like all the time.
Well, back when I had the metabolism of a young man that was 21 years old, no, definitely the Doritos were a frequent event. But as you get older, you have to do less of the things you love to feel half as good as you did when. Although I know you disagree on that, Matt. I know.
Yeah, I don't think that's as automatic as you're making it sound like it is. I think you just happened to be in very good shape when you were younger.
No, I had, not to get off track, I had like crazy fast metabolism when I was a teenager. Like, Matt, this is serious. There was a couple period. This is embarrassing, but like when I was like 14 or 15, for 2 weeks I lived off of every day I would eat either a few corn dogs or a large pizza by myself, a like half a container of frozen yogurt covered in chocolate syrup, and some potato chips. And for like 2 or 3 weeks, that's all I ate, and I lost weight. Like I couldn't keep weight on my body, and I just. When people say, like, what's
that doesn't necessarily mean you were healthy, but yes,
no,
I get what you're saying.
No, to get wrong, I probably had, like, scurvy almost. But, like, I mean, that was, in some ways, Matt, the best point of my life. Like,
yeah, well, I think I have an opposite experience because I was pretty out of shape as a teenager. And I was, when I got to college is when I got into better shape. And I feel like now I'm in my late 30s in much better shape than I was when I was a teenager. So I think that and feel better. So I think that it just really depends on who you are. But yes, Generally speaking, when you are younger, it is, I think, considered easier to stay in shape than when you're older. I would agree with that.
Okay, next story we have is the Pro Wrestling Torch. Again, they write, regarding newcomer Jay Fury, Sapolsky says he has a unique in-ring style that he believes will translate well with the Ring of Honor audience. Quote, Jay Fury has a very natural charisma and connection to the fans, he says. Again, quote, he does some unique, exciting moves. He doesn't look like your typical high flyer, but he is very graceful. He's done very well in FIP recently in matches versus Bryan Danielson and Austin Aries, among others, and he continues to grow as a worker. And yeah, this is another one of those things where, it continues to be the pattern. It feels like every show we're getting like comments from the newsletters about I keep saying that basically show after show lately about like, there's either comments like indirectly to the newsletters or kids like this directly from Sapolsky, like it's one of these crop of these new young flyers that they're really putting over, and none of them, I keep saying this, none of them will be around basically by the end of the year. So it's crazy that I will continue to say it's crazy that not one of them stuck. And I'm looking forward to, in a weird way, like knowing that all these guys still have some matches left this year in Ring of Honor, and knowing that they've all kind of impressed us to varying degrees, like no one's been a bomb to us, it'll be interesting to see, like, do any of them like have that Vordell Walker moment where they go, okay, that was kind of a dead performance. I can see why they started to like give up on plans, because so far I haven't seen anything to that degree.
Well, I haven't really checked, but like, does Jay Fury even appear at all after the shows we already watched?
I will have to check if you can.
Yeah, I haven't checked. He might, but I don't always remember all the undercards, especially on some of those like non-A shows that they have. But yeah, I mean, I agree that Jay Fury had a good style that could have gotten over. Like, I agreed with that quote, and yeah, I mean, sometimes the rosters just get full. I mean, unless you're AEW, in which case it's just apparently ever expanding, but. In general, there's just not enough spots for everybody.
Jay Fury works 2 more times for Ring of Honor in 2006. He works both halves of the Weekend of Champions double shot in the Midwest. And then that's it for him.
I figured it was one of those shows.
Yeah. So really, yeah, like he's hyping him up here, but after that quote, he only gets like one double shot, and he's in a tag match against Irish Airborne, teaming with Spud of all people, and then he's in a random like 6-man mayhem spot fest. So he's just, and both of those matches each are like 8 minutes long a piece. So, he doesn't really get much of a chance post this. So whatever happened, I don't know. I assume like everything in life, Matt, there's a story to it, but that's that. Then I guess something we should talk about. We got a delightful email a couple of days ago from a listener, William Young, and he just kind of reminded us, although I knew this was coming, that this was the time when the Ring of Honor video wire started, which was basically, I think, Matt, you talked on the last episode, we were talking about ROHvideos.com was their kind of thing, and how you were talking about they quickly transitioned to just doing, instead of like just a whole bunch of clips, more of like, we're going to do kind of a video version of the news wire each week or two. And that started before the show, and William was nice enough to send us a link to a YouTube playlist that has like a pretty good collection of all of them. So I watched the 2 or 3 ones that took place before Best in the World, and I kind of forgot what the videos wires, exactly what their format was. And at least for the first 2 or 3, it is basically clips from the most recent show that has not yet even been released on DVD yet, and then one very minor exclusive promo that is not going to be on the DVDs, that is just on the video wire. So like,
yeah, now am I correct in remembering this, that at the beginning they were not called the video wire, they were called the video update, and then they became...
and I think then they changed it after a few... Yeah, I think you're right on that too.
And I think they become a little bit more detailed when they become the video wire, but not so much more. Like they become a little bit longer. There are some that are longer than others, but in general, I think that is pretty much the format.
So like the first one is the promo. I mean, I'm not going to go into these like in detail going forward or even really here, but like the first one, the example of things that happen would be like Gary Michael Capetta's backstage with Bryan Danielson, and Bryan Danielson's wondering like, oh, can I trust Samoa Joe? And so Gary's like, we'll get him on the next video wire. And then the next video wire, which has clearly been taped like 5 seconds after the first one, Samoa Joe steps into the room with Danielson and Capetta, and they talk, and they do a really funny, corny thing where they're like, each one throws to a package of like a highlight music video for themselves. Each time it's like, Joe, you think you can beat me? Well, I think you should take a look at this, and it's just a bunch of clips. But then the one other of the 3 I watched, they had the other exclusive content was a promo from Adam Pearce on CZW, which did have the one funny line where he's talking about CZW, and of course CZW's big thing was calling themselves like ultra violent. And Pearce at one point goes, "What does ultra violent even mean? That you glow in the dark?" And I thought that was kind of a good like dumb jock energy comment, that he thought ultra violent was ultra violent, Matt.
Ultraviolet rays. That would be a cool like gimmick, that they had ultraviolet rays that they gave off.
Or just a guy
or a good name for like a tag team where like both wrestlers are named Ray.
That was the original name of the Dudleys. It was going to be Bubba Ray, and then
Ray Mysterio.
Yeah, the original Dudley boys, Ray Mysterio and Bubba Ray Dudley.
The ultraviolet rays.
So that brings us to a slightly less ultraviolet show, Best in the World, which took place March 25th, 2006 at Basketball City in New York City in front of a reported crowd of 1,050 fans. Dave Meltzer would write in The Observer, "It was the best crowd Ring of Honor's ever done in New York, but that's also because the other buildings they played in haven't been able to put nearly this many people in. All the matches that had time were 3 stars or more, with many different types of matches. We will be the judge of that," Dave Meltzer. The Torch would add, they would talk to Gabe Sapolsky. The Torch would write, "Ring of Honor booker Gabe Sapolsky tells PW Torch that he is thrilled with the buzz Ring of Honor is getting in the Manhattan, New York market after drawing over 1,000 fans last Saturday, which was well above their previous draw there. Quote, I think the word is definitely spreading through New York City about Ring of Honor," he says. "I believe we would have broken over 1,000 for Joe versus Kobashi, but the building couldn't hold it. Our goal now is to keep presenting the kind of shows that create a buzz and get people to keep coming back while bringing in new people. There's no telling what the possibility for attendance might be." Sapolsky also has high hopes for Ring of Honor's upcoming triple shot during WrestleMania weekend. Quote, my expectations for the triple shot are that these will be the 3 best shows Ring of Honor has ever put on. And then I guess maybe a self-fulfilling prophecy in terms of hype. But we will review those very shortly. But I think he's not necessarily wrong. But a few weeks after those shows happened, the Torch would report again, quote, Ring of Honor management considers the March 25th, March 30th, March 31st, and April 1st events easily the best events in the entire history of the company. So, Matt, that's something that we should, I guess, keep in mind as we review this show and the next 3 after it is, do we agree? Are these the 4 best shows we've seen in Ring of Honor history thus far?
Yeah, I mean, I guess we'll talk about this one at the end of this one, but yeah, I mean, I don't want to spoil anything, but because I haven't really rewatched them, but my recollection is that those Chicago shows are indeed in a lot of ways the best shows ROH has ever done. That is how I remember it at that point. I mean.
So yeah, this was, a big success for Ring of Honor in terms of you got over 1,000 fans. You got your, you didn't
supposedly over 1,000 fans. That's what they said.
Yeah. I mean, you always take everything with a grain of salt. And Matt, were you at Basketball City? Were you doing the seat count, Matt?
I wasn't doing the seat count, but I was there. And as I mentioned on the last Basketball City show, Steel Cage Warfare, when I got general admission tickets, which I usually do because I'm a man of the people, they were bad seats and I couldn't really see anything that happened on the mat. So this time I changed my game plan and I got 2nd or 3rd row seats, and I had a much better experience at Basketball City this time than I did the first time.
Fancy, Matt. But we open with a still shot of BJ Whitmer at the end of the last show as a Gabe voiceover recaps the end of that show, describing how a CZW army Gabe refers to as barbarians ruined Ring of Honor's debut in ECW Arena. Gabe says that after much debate, Ring of Honor has decided to show us what happened after they cut off the last show, which they cut off right at the point of John Zandig just beginning a promo. Gabe warns us that it is graphic and not for everyone, but is being shown to us to show us the animalistic nature of the CZW army. So at this point, the promo starts. We get a sweary, hard-to-decipher John Zandig promo that he's shitting on Ring of Honor. He stops multiple times trying to kick BJ Whitmer pretty hard in the back. Zandig says this is just the start. The Ring of Honor fans in the building start to loudly chant boring. We cut to outside the building where Ring of Honor students are still getting into it with CZW wrestlers just as they were at the end of the last show. And Bobby Dempsey is loudly saying he will, quote, kick your fucking ass one-on-one, bitch. He is pissed. We cut back to the building. We can.
Wow, that is not the biggest. That is not the most dynamic quote. Yes.
We can barely make out what Zandig is saying as CZW continues to run rampant. We cut back outside where Bobby Dempsey tells someone, this is the quote Matt was alluding to, he'll ass rape them. So
this is something that you'd think they would edit off the DVD. But anyway, I'll have more to say about this when Trevor is done recapping.
We cut back to the ring where Zandig powerbombs Whitmer and more CZW wrestlers beat down BJ before they leave the ring. Zandig bashes an Ring of Honor ring sign with his barbed wire baseball bat. And then we cut to outside my favorite moment of this segment where Rhett Titus screams, "That's right, motherfuckers! Ring of Honor!" I just started laughing. It was like the growls. I'm not used to like Rhett Titus, addicted to love Rhett Titus being that angry. It was pretty funny. Anyway, cut back to Whitmer alone in the ring as he tries to recover, blood on his face, CZW spray paint on his back. All as the CZW theme blares over the PA. A voiceover from Gabe tells us that BJ won't be on tonight's show due to the injuries inflicted on him at this previous show. Gabe says Ring of Honor wants revenge, and they're putting out an open call for any CZW wrestlers to show up tonight, saying that unlike CZW, the entire locker room won't jump them, and the numbers will be even. Gabe says they will let CZW issue any challenge they want, and it will be answered, calling tonight CZW's Free Pass. So that's the segment. Matt, overall, I thought, we really talked a lot about the most of the rest of the segment that aired at the end of Arena Warfare, the last show. I was a pretty big fan of that segment. I feel like this was kind of like not as good as that. You could have left this on the cutting room floor. This was kind of diminishing returns. You know, the Zandig promo, you couldn't really decipher much of it. The more exciting part was just the initial flood of guys and, you know, the weed whacker and the, you know, spray painting. This is just kind of the aftermath.
Well, I thought this would have been much better if they edited out literally every single thing involving the ROH students. No offense to any of them, but that was a complete, like, waste of, like, DVD time. Like, it added nothing. And Shane Hagedorn mentioned on an honorable mention, a lot of the stuff that the people they were yelling at were just, like, fans. Like, they were just arguing with fans outside. And it's like, what did that add to anything? And yeah, that comment by Dempsey, like, you know, I get it. You know, they were young kids and, you know, being stupid in the heat of the moment. But, like, even in 2006, you'd be like, okay, this doesn't really need to be on our DVD. Because didn't that, like, actually start, like, people chanting that after he said it? But certainly wouldn't make the cut of a wrestling show now. But, yeah, I just thought that the cutting back and forth to the students made this whole thing a little bit less effective. As far as what was actually happening in the ring, yeah, it was fine. I think it was good to kind of hear a little bit from Zandig because he sort of is the leader, and it was sort of a little bit mission statement. Like he says, this isn't that internet bullshit. This is real, you know, stuff like that. I think that's kind of good, you know, not totally necessary, but I think it added more than it detracted. But overall, I think that I mentioned this last time, but especially on this segment, the stuff outside really felt like Bush League to me.
Especially because, like, if you just came into the show and didn't watch Arena Warfare, it's just like a random cutaway. Like, you don't really get the full context of what they're even cutting away to, which is, you know, in the last one that a bunch of the Ring of Honor wrestlers ended up brawling to the outside with a bunch of the CZW guys. If this happens, you're just literally like seeing a John Zandig segment and then randomly cutting to like Ring of Honor students screaming at people you can't really see. Like,
yeah, it was like, I mean, that's the only way I could really describe it. It felt completely amateur hour. But, you know, I think I like the stuff in the ring a little bit better than you did, but I really didn't like that other stuff.
And that brings us to the top 5 rankings. We get another top 5 rankings video. Enjoy them while they can, because as always, I've been reading ahead on I read ahead months and months and months when I do notes, or at least I try to. And I don't know how far ahead it is, but I've already gotten to the point in writing up my notes of a future show where they're like, yeah, Ring of Honor is giving up on the top 5 rankings again. So enjoy these while we can, Matt. Top 5 rankings for this episode would be number 5, Samoa Joe. Number 4, Alex Shelley. Number 3, Christopher Daniels. Number 2, Jimmy Yang. And number 1, Roderick Strong.
Now, am I correct that they really just update it every month, so this would have been the same as what was on Arena Warfare?
Was Samoa Joe in the top 5 last time? I'm not sure.
I will double check and bring it up in a minute. But
yeah,
anyway.
Either way, it is kind of weird when you don't update every show. If you're just a nerdy viewer that is buying every DVD like we were in the day, because it's like Jimmy Yang and Roderick Strong faced off on the last show when Yang was 2 and Roderick was 1, and you know Yang loses, and it's still Jimmy Yang number 2. So it was like,
yeah, the top 5 was exactly the same at Arena Warfare. Yeah. I think they just updated for each month.
And so that brings us to the 2 dark matches that obviously did not make the DVD, or otherwise they wouldn't be dark matches. The first one, I thought this one was a little bit interesting for longtime Ring of Honor fans. Mitch Franklin, Ring of Honor student, defeated Mike Tobin, which, you know, really longtime listeners or big-time, you know, indie fans will remember as one half of the Boogie Nights, Matt.
Yeah.
That's got to be a long, long time between shows, between the last time he appeared, which was probably only the first few Ring of Honor shows.
Yeah, it's a 4-year gap for Tobin. I'm thinking probably summer of 2002, if I remember correctly. I'm not positive about that, but that's my recollection.
Yeah, they were not long for the world. They were one of those many acts that just kind of started off and didn't really gain traction. And then we had a dark 4-corner survival match. Bobby Dempsey defeated Keenan Quinn, Shane Hagedorn, and Smash Bradley. So that brings us to the actual opener of the show that we did get to see. Jimmy Rave, scored to the ring by Prince Nana, defeated Pele Primo via pinfall in a minute 57 after he hit Greetings from Ghana. And I guess this part we did not see on the DVD, though. Dave Meltzer wrote in The Observer, it started with Bruce Leroy, Ty Mack. Apologies if I'm getting that pronunciation wrong.
Yeah, I heard Shane Hagedorn say it was Bruce Leroy, but I'm not I'm not an expert on him, so I don't know for sure.
Yeah, I'm not. I need to brush up on my old like cult action films, but either way, of Last Dragon fame coming out, and he got a reaction that stunned everyone. Rave squashed Pele Primo and then challenged Leroy. Pretty sure he used to hang around at the early UFCs because I could swear I saw him when Tank Abbott was a big star, watching Abbott and knowing that a good boxer would destroy his wild haymakers. I love that Dave, that's just a classic Dave tangent where it's just like...
He has to throw in that he has good analysis about things.
It's just like, oh, I remember him. He was at a UFC and made an offhand comment, so I will include that. Very much Dave's mind, which is kind of just... sometimes Dave's mind is the equivalent of like clearing out a fridge to make like soup out of leftovers, where it's just like you're grabbing everything that's there. Doesn't matter if it goes together. You're just putting it in the pot. It's just like, these are the thoughts I have on him. They're all going out there. But Matt, I don't know if we actually saw Rave make a challenge to him. So I don't know if that was just an interpretation of what we end up seeing, or if maybe there's a little bit edited out. But either way,
I think there was some stuff edited out.
Yeah, either way, what we do see is this squash match.
It's funny because they mentioned that it was for ROHvideos.com, and I'm just like, yeah, I'm sure this would hook a lot of people. this 1 minute squash match.
It seems like a lot of the Ring of Honor, like maybe all of the ROH video stuff during this brief time where they would upload matches, they were all basically squashes for their big stars. Or
there was one pretty cool squash they have later in the year, but even that was a squash. Yeah, it's
now. So I was going to ask you, what do you think about that? Because you can look at it two ways, right? Like on one hand, you can say Ring of Honor was, as Gabe would always say, a DVD product. At this point, that was one of their two big revenue streams, along with ticket sales. And so the idea of giving away any big match, if that stops someone from buying a DVD, that could be a bad thing. But on the other hand, you could argue, what you just said, basically, which is, are squash matches really going to convert anyone that's not already a Ring of Honor fan? Like, that's not really, like... Ring of Honor is the kind that does almost no squash matches. That's not really indicative of what Ring of Honor is. It isn't going to impress people. I know that in later years, when it became easier to do so once like YouTube and video sites became more prevalent, I would notice that a lot of indie companies, when they, like ones that weren't really that big on the map, when they did have one match that would come like catch fire, they wouldn't hold it back. They would like oftentimes, more often than not, release that for free on YouTube. So at least among smaller indies that are maybe just trying to get noticed, when they would have a big match, they would kind of do the opposite. They'd be like, we're going to give you the thing that you probably might be tempted to pay money for. We're going to give it to you for completely free, just trying to maximize the eyeballs on this.
I mean, the only thing I could think of is that when they put these matches that, didn't have a lot of demand on the ROH video site, it wasn't really because they expected it to create a lot of buzz, but more just like, we'll throw it up and we'll see how it does, just to kind of test the waters on this video thing to see if we can grow it. As opposed to actually thinking that it was going to do anything to affect business in any way,
Yeah. So before the squash, there's a huge toilet paper shower. We get our usual die, Jimmy, die chant. It takes forever to clean up the toilet paper in the ring before this match. Prazak on commentary says, this is truly a milestone show for Ring of Honor, marking almost a year of running New York and the first time they've broken 1,000 fans in Manhattan. Matt, you when you were watching this before me, you kind of, because we talked about on a recent show, I asked like, how we talked about how this is part of the Milestone series of shows, which was a 7-show string for Ring of Honor, where every show was kind of a different milestone. And this was the one show I couldn't figure out what the milestone was. And so you watching this, you quickly said to me, I guess this is like their tenuous milestone that they've been in New York almost a year, and 2, this is the first time they've broken 1,000 fans in Manhattan. Not even New York, because wasn't the first year anniversary show in New York the Elks Lodge? I think it was. It was, yes, but that did not have 1,000 people. But yes, okay. It was. Yes. So this is just a squash. Jimmy Rave isn't really a squash kind of guy. He doesn't hit many big moves here. He mostly just attacks with punches. Pele, though, he's great at selling. Almost too great, especially with how quickly he goes to, like, really looking like he's dead, like just struggling to get to his feet after just a few blows. But for a small student, it works. He gets one real spot to shine, which he hits a springboard crossbody. He then takes a spear from Jimmy Rave that he makes look like $1 million. He just takes a great spear here. And yeah, there's not much to this, is there, Matt?
No, it's a squash match.
Yeah, so that's why I didn't even throw to you, because I don't even really consider this like a full match to review.
It was fine, as a squash match, but nothing to say about it, really.
Nana gets on the mic immediately after the match to gloat. He gets his usual incredibly loud "shut the fuck up" chant. He gets into it with one fan. He calls that fan a piece of shit, which for some reason, Nana calling someone like just nakedly a piece of shit, for some reason I was like, whoa, did not expect that from Nana, although I'm sure he's done that before. Nana says that Jimmy Rave deserves to be a champion and no one can take him out. When he points out Bruce Leroy, who is sitting at the timekeeper's table, we get a Leroy chant. And Nana says he thought Leroy was Chinese. Jimmy Yang runs to the ring with Nana fleeing. Yang bows to Leroy. Rave attacks Yang, and we have an impromptu match. Jimmy Yang defeats Jimmy Rave via pinfall in 6 minutes, 32 seconds using a crucifix. Matt, so I guess this is our first meaty, even this isn't really that meaty. It's 6.5 minutes, but what do you think about this, especially knowing that, we're supposed to be heating up Jimmy Yang for a title match with Danielson, I would say, starting around this point.
I think in this match, Yang looked as good as he has so far. It felt like it was quick and it was fun. To me, it felt almost like a TV match in a good way. They didn't waste time. Yang showed fire right off the bat, and the crowd was really into him, which helped. The crowd was really hot for most of this show. And I think that helped a lot of things come across better than they necessarily would have otherwise. But I thought it was a fun match. Rave worked over the neck. Yang came back and did some moves, and then Yang kind of hurt his shoulder by running into the ring post. There was a few spots with Nana. Yang jumps off the apron with a spin kick on Nana, which I kind of noticed this over the past few shows. Nana has been pretty good at finding fun ways for baby faces to attack him during a match. Like, I feel like in a lot of his matches that happens in just various ways, and I think he's particularly good at that.
There is the Rave match with Danielson at the 4th anniversary show. I thought, I've been noticing lately too, a little more of this, Nana's getting pretty good at picking the spots, Yeah,
and I think he did a good job in this one too. There was one spot that I thought was kind of silly, which was after Rave ducked a kick, he hit the ropes and hit his spear on Yang, and Yang does this really gratuitous spin sell, which I don't think is necessarily the best way to sell a spear, but it was amusing. And even the ending, it was a pretty sudden crucifix pin combo, but yeah, I think this was as much as I've enjoyed a Yang singles match so far. It wasn't great, but I thought it was fun.
You like this a lot more than me. I thought this was a weird match. You'd think Yang would get a lot of offense, and he does get some bursts. I thought it was really Rave who controlled this match, and I thought just based on the story of it and knowing what they're setting up Yang, I thought Yang would have controlled more. I also thought it was weird that Yang wins kind of out of nowhere against the flow of offense, where he just, Rave is beating him down, and Yang just gets a counter crucifix for the quick flash pin. Nana did cheat to help Rave, and I did think that spot you talked about where Nana gets on the ring apron and Yang jumps off the top rope and hits him with a kick as he's standing on the ring apron. I thought that was the spot of the match. But I thought this was for a guy you're building for a title shot, this did not, to me, make him look like a world beater. I didn't think it was that interesting of a match. It was neither long enough to feel really substantial, nor really action-packed enough to be exciting for a short match. I thought it was average. I didn't hate it, but I just definitely did not see this as this is Jimmy Yang's best performance or something. I just thought it was very average.
I guess the big disagreement is I thought it was pretty action-packed.
Yeah. Maybe I just Matt, there's always a chance I was grumpy the day I was watching it, but actually, I don't know. I don't think I've been grumpy lately. So you know what?
You are always in a good mood, Trevor. So I don't think that's ever the problem.
Immediately after the match, Rave and Nana beat Yang down until Bruce Leroy enters the ring, taking off his shirt and taking out Nana with a high kick. Rave ducks a big spin kick and bails to the outside as the crowd chants for Leroy. He helps Yang up, and the crowd gives a big round of applause. Well, and I wrote my notes, the crowd really liked Bruce Leroy at least. Yang gets on the mic and thanks Bruce and asks, who's the master? who's the baddest, who's the prettiest. And Bruce seems tickled by this tribute, and we quickly cut away. So
I think they cut away because Yang issued like a challenge to a match that wasn't approved by the booker. So I think they cut that out of it was like to like a tag match with Bruce Leroy, which obviously never happens. But yeah, when I was there live, I sort of felt a little bit uncool because like I haven't seen The Last Dragon. I'm not up on that kind of stuff. So I was I didn't really Bruce Leroy, no offense to him, didn't really mean much to me. Like, so I was like, wow, these people really love this guy, and I just am completely unaware. I'm completely ignorant of who this is or why he's cool.
I mean, as I understand it, like Last Dragon is like a cult hit, but like it is not a giant. I don't think like people reacted. I mean, I don't want to oversell, but he was very over in this building. It did not sound like it was like 5 people that liked him. It was most people, and then Matt Feuerstein in row 2 or 3 going, I wish I knew him.
That's exactly what it is. Like I felt left out.
Yeah.
But everything in this match was pretty over. Like, I mean, I think you have to admit, even if you weren't crazy about Jimmy Yang's performance, he was very over on this show.
No, and I think just him interfering on like Bruce's behalf when like I just feel like this worked out the way celebrity stuff should, where I felt like Yang did get a little bit of a rub here. Because, they like the celebrity, and then they're like, hey, this guy's like sticking up for the celebrity. He's having a fun interaction with them after the match. And, this is one of the ways where like a celebrity can legit give a little bit of a, not a huge rub, but like a bit of a rub to a wrestler when you just do it right and do it simply. But next that brings us to the 4-corner survival match. Allison Danger defeated Daisy Hayes, Lacey, and Mercedes Martinez, making her Ring of Honor debut in 10 minutes, 31 seconds, when Danger pinned Lacey with an Oklahoma roll. I'll go first to the Observer. Dave wrote from the live reports, said to be really strong and the best women's match ever in the promotion. Fans were unhappy with the finish because it was clear they thought Martinez was the star of the match and got over great in the female tough guy role. Matt, I thought this was one of the more feel-good matches we've ever, not one of the best matches, but one of the better, more feel-good moments we've seen in Ring of Honor in a while. Maybe in the history of ThROH The Years. Up to this point, I felt like women always get a raw deal in Ring of Honor. We've talked about extensively, but, and they would get a raw deal at many points after this. But so many nights, either commentary perved on the women, or they patronized them by over-complimenting them, or the fans were into the match, or they had sexist chants of their own, or the match was shortchanged on time. This was one of the first women's matches in Ring of Honor, I felt like, Matt, where it did not only did it feel like the women got a fair shot, it felt like everyone there was supporting them. Like
One of the first times?
Yeah, you're probably right. Like, I always try and protect myself, Matt, because my memory is so bad that I try and be intentionally vague in case there's like one women's match I'm forgetting. What would you say is like the most serious women's match they've booked before this? Like, would it be
maybe one of the really early ones, honestly, with like Sumi Sakai and Simply Luscious or something. No, but like not that they were the best, but like in terms of treating them seriously. But like, because I remember there was one, I don't even remember who was in it at this point, but like that they were trying to have a serious match, but the whole match was Mark Nolte talking about like, yeah, isn't it crazy that these women aren't just tits and ass, like, and like that was the entire. So like this was the only women's match that was completely presented in a appropriate and respectful way by everyone involved. The only one so far.
Yeah. So I completely agree. And again, going to the point about everyone supporting them, the crowd was very hot for them. At times, I would say bordering on generous. Not that there's anything wrong with it, but they were, it was like refreshing where so often you see, the women's matches, have to really earn everything they get, and this was something where this was like a crowd that was reacting to them the way you'd react to like wrestlers you already really know and love, where you're kind of giving generous reactions where you're popping pretty big for basic exchanges at some points. The commentary is Dave Prazak and Lenny Leonard, who play things straight, which, is something that most Ring of Honor women's matches at this point haven't had. They bring up the women's Shimmer history when appropriate. I think this was even kind of sold as a Shimmer offer match.
And they don't act shocked that the women are good wrestlers, right? Like they're not like, can you believe how good these women are? They're just like, oh, these women, they're wrestlers. Like that. That's it.
the best compliment I can give to this is it felt like a Shimmer match, like it felt like they were treating it close to what they would have treated these four if they were having the same match in Shiver. And like even Gabe gets in on the action because at one point Prazak kind of half walks back a boast where he's plugging one of the main events of one of the early Shimmer cards, which was just starting up at this point, trying to sell some DVDs. And then Prazak kind of adorably, like you say, like some people are saying it's one of the best women's matches in North America ever. Then he kind of walks it back. He says something like, well, of recent years or something. And then Gabe actually like gets on comment, interjects. He's like, you were right the first time. Like even Gabe is like just being supportive here and probably also trying to help sell some DVDs. But it just felt like on this night in this match, everyone involved from the crowd to the booker to the announcers, they all really wanted these women to succeed and they actually got a fair shot for once, which maybe we shouldn't be like so like grateful for that. It's lowered expectations, but I mean, my expectations have been lowered, Matt. So the match itself, I would say, is a decent four-way. Lacey and Daisy do some grappling early. I feel like Daisy is often one of the stouts of these matches. She's the one that's really willing to fly. She does another big dive to the floor here. She takes a hellacious bump, just getting drop toe hold onto the bottom rope hard by Allison Danger. She just takes that bottom rope really hard. Later, Allison swings Daisy into a barricade, and then Allison Danger loses balance and knocks into the cameraman, which made the camera shake. And it wasn't intentional, but I love those kind of moments because it just reminds you, wrestling's a physical thing. Things you can bump into people, you can knock people over. Fairly deep into this match, I then noticed that Mercedes Martinez was the only person in this match not getting decent match time. And I thought, oh, that's weird because she's like the one debut that's never had a match here before. And then all the change, which with the clear highlight of the match, something I was so impressed by, I clipped on the video of it and put it on Twitter a while ago, and it got lots of people praise. People really enjoyed getting a clip of this, but it's a hot tag. Mercedes makes a tag into the match, and she does her own version of the Three Amigos, where she does a suplex, but then a brain buster, and then a German suplex on Lacey, and then she hits a huge spine buster on Daisy, and the crowd goes absolutely bonkers for this. It's the loudest pop, I would say, of the entire night so far, at least on the same level of the top Bruce Leroy reactions, and it's about as good of a hot tag as I've seen in Ring of Honor period for a while. And it was just one of those things where it was one of those moments where you watch the clip and she hits one move and the crowd's kind of into it, and then she hits a second and they get more, and it's like every move they're getting louder and louder and louder and losing their minds. And it's just a really cool moment. And I feel like if you're in a random undercard four-way and you get one of those moments in a four-way, you should be pretty happy, because that was a memorable moment that really got the crowd on their feet. I thought overall this was a strong, above average, bordering on just being outright 3-star good four-way. I mean, there's some roughness to some of the work, as you'd expect for women at this period that we're still having a hard time getting regular bookings with lots of ring time. But I thought it was good for what it was. The finish I disliked though, Matt, because this is the kind of finish I normally dislike, this kind of finish where Mercedes has Lacey taken out with her Fisherman's Buster, but she's not legal, so the ref won't count the pin. Allison Danger this whole time is just selling in the corner. So then at this point, Daisy comes off the top. She takes out Mercedes Martinez with a missile dropkick, but then she sells herself from the impact of landing from the missile dropkick. And then Danger just kind of recovers a bit, walks to Lacey, does the Oklahoma roll, and get the win. And one of my pet peeves is I don't like the idea. I don't usually like the finish of a match where one person is just there selling being out, and then everyone else kind of beats each other up, and then the person that was kind of out of it just kind of walks in the race oh, I guess I'll win the match now with just going for a pin. I think that finish works if it's a heel doing it to get cheap heat, but Allison Danger was not a heel here. But overall, I really enjoyed this just for the overall vibe of this match.
Yeah, well, first of all, just to going back to the last serious women's match, I think probably a year earlier at Back to Basics, there was a match with Allison Danger, Cindy Rogers, Daisy Hayes, and Lacey, and I think that was probably the closest to this. I mean, that was nowhere near on the same league as this match, because I like this match a lot more than you did. I thought this was the best four-way match in ROH period in a long time. just in terms of getting over, being entertaining, having good momentum. I agree with you about the finish. I thought it was a legitimately bad finish, just too abrupt. The match was building to something better than that. But the match itself, well, first of all, so the Mercedes Martinez moment that you mentioned. So this is honestly one of the most memorable things for me, like going to this show live, was that moment. Like, I never forgot that. And I had never seen Mercedes Martinez at all before this. I'm not even sure if I'd heard of her. And she made such an impression on that crowd. Like, she's been one of my favorites ever since, and I've been rooting for her to get, on TV and become a big star. And like, it actually stunned me that ROH didn't do more with her after this. Like, I just didn't understand it, and I don't know, maybe it was she wasn't interested. I honestly, I don't know the story, but she just got so over, and she looked so awesome in this. But I thought, the other ones, they kind of, I mean, I think she was definitely the standout, but they did a good job. Lacey was doing a great job being a heel. Daisy was, I think, still getting used to being a heel. She wasn't really doing a lot of heelish stuff until at one point she was teasing a dive, and then and she got the crowd to cheer it, and then finally she kind of said, "Nah, I'm not going to dive," and flip her off. And then Mercedes comes behind her and like makes her dive by shoving her off the top rope onto Lacey and Allison Danger. I thought that was a really good spot. I thought there was a lot of fun stuff in this match, and except for the finish, really. The other thing that I really liked, we don't get to hear it too much in ROH, and I haven't really watched a lot of Shimmer in a long time, but I really loved Allison Danger's entrance music. I wish we could have gotten more of that. But I don't know if you noticed this, Mercedes got a good reaction just for, like, on her entrance, so definitely the crowd knew her.
Yeah, I wonder if it is really I thought that same thing you did, Matt, which is like, why didn't she get more of a shot in Ring of Honor? And the only kind of thing I can think of is it seems like the women that Ring of Honor did give like any semblance of what we would consider at the time like a women's push in Ring of Honor would be women that could pull double duty as like managers, so maybe to save costs because they're always on the road. So like Lacey, with Lacey's Angels, and Daisy Hayes now with the Embassy, and Allison Danger with Christopher Daniels. But my thought is, well, couldn't you put Mercedes Martinez with somebody? Maybe they didn't think she could carry the end of the mic work, but I was like, why couldn't you stick her at this point with the Rottweilers or with Generation Next or someone like that,
Yeah, I mean, for whatever reason, they didn't put. I mean, I don't know how anybody in the back could have watched this match and not thought that Mercedes Martinez was the standout.
I mean, even the Observer, even with the live reports, like Dave is even like clearly made enough impression that even the people that just write into Dave are like, this was great, and Mercedes Martinez was the star of this. But
yeah,
pardon me, jeez, frog in my throat. But
so that's two matches in a row that I liked significantly more than you did. Will it be a trend?
See, maybe I am grumpy. I don't think I'm grumpy. You just said I'm always in a good mood. Maybe I am grumpy, but I like them. I mean, okay, I did not like the Yang match at all. I liked the women's match quite a bit, just as an overall package. I thought it was a fairly good match, but yeah, I probably did not like it as a nuts and bolts wrestling match as much as you, but I just loved the entire like vibe of that match and Mercedes Martinez's individual performance. That brings us to Chris Hero and Necro Butcher defeating Jason Blade and Kid Makazi in 47 seconds when Hero made Makazi tap out to a choke in what would be Makazi's final Ring of Honor match. As Blade and Makazi make their entrance, Chris Hero and Necro Butcher make their way to the ring. Hero grabs the mic. The crowd chants, "Fuck you, Hero." Necro covers his ears like he doesn't want to hear it, which I thought was adorable. A couple people throw toilet paper at Hero as he mentions hearing something about Ring of Honor's free pass policy for CZW wrestlers tonight. Hero challenges Blade and Makazi and awesomely ends his mic work by pointing to Blade and saying, "Necro, kill," to start the match. The result is a very short squash where Necro batters Blade on the outside, including slamming him onto a chair.
How many ROH shows have two squashes?
Yeah, I mean, that's truly, Matt, this is why Ring of Honor is best in the world. But Hero beats Makazi clean with a choke. After the match, Necro continues to attack Blade as the crowd chants, "Get the fuck out." Hero's back on the mic. He says he'll get out when he damn well pleases. He then tells us there's an asshole that's been running his mouth for far too long, and he calls out Adam Pearce, calling him a pussy. Pearce appears out of nowhere from behind in brawling gear, in other words, jeans and a t-shirt. He takes out Hero, The ref rings the bell for another impromptu match. Now, the funny thing here, Matt, is looking at Cage Match. Cage Match has this written down as Adam Pearce versus Chris Hero went to a no contest in 3 minutes, 10 seconds. This really just felt like Adam Pearce and Necro Butcher went to a no contest.
Right. Hero was barely involved. You know, this is where ROH's whole thing about not having commentary when there aren't, like, official matches kind of hurts them, because they could have just explained what was going on commentary, but they always have the commentators completely lay out for stuff like this. And I'm not a fan of that policy.
Yeah, so really this is just a 3-minute Pierce Necro match. The two brawl into the crowd. They exchange chair shots. At one point, the cameraman is so close to them in the crowd that Pierce hits the cameraman with a chair on the backswing. And I just wrote my notes, poor cameraman taking a beating tonight. Because I think it might have been the same guy that, like, Allison Danger knocked into on the last match. But they make their way back to ringside and fight a little more before Pierce slams Necro through a table, at which point Hero reappears. He attacks Pierce. They go back inside the ring. Hero kicks Pierce in the balls, and the ref calls for the bell for the rare, I assume, Ring of Honor DQ. But then Bobby Cruz says that the match has been ruled a no contest. So,
yeah, it was very, very weird. And that stuff that's like, quote, sports entertainment finish type stuff.
Hero and Butcher, and we should note that Butcher now has a nasty gash on his leg, presumably from the table break, puts the boots to Pierce as Hero gets back on the mic and says he's not done. He'd like to call somebody else out. We get a huge Joe chant. Hero says, think again, morons. He says he's calling out a student of his tag team partner, his best friend. He asked him to get out here and help him finish the job. This person does not show up immediately, so then Hero gets back on the mic and he yells, Claudio Castagnoli, get your ass out here. Claudio appears in tights and a t-shirt looking confused. He watches Hero and Necro attack as they encourage him to join the fight. But instead, Claudio takes out Necro and Hero to a nice pop. Hero and Necro immediately and cowardly escape through the crowd as Claudio gets on the mic and says, fuck CZW. You're looking at the next Ring of Honor Pure champion. We get a big Ring of Honor chant. And Pierce takes the mic and asks Hero and Butcher to get their asses back in the goddamn ring right now. But says they won't because the odds are now even. Pierce shakes Claudio's hand and leads the crowd in a Ring of Honor chant. As they raise each other's hands, they walk to the back together celebrating. Matt, before I ask your opinion on this segment, what I did love is this is something the commentary we talked about in the next segment and then during the next match. And Wade Keller, I thought, had a great little thing here where he goes, the announcers reflected on Claudio confirming that despite his work for other organizations and working with CZW wrestlers before, he is, quote, Ring of Honor through and through, unquote. Anytime a wrestler is described as being anything through and through is a guarantee of a turn coming up, which I thought was like, yes, that's a good point.
The question is, did Wade already know that turn had happened when he made that review?
But this was classic Ring of Honor, laying it on very thick, the opposite of what's going to happen. Like Prazak and Lenny, they were clearly instructed them the next match to be like, we got Claudio on our side, right on nothing could go wrong here. Like almost going as far as to say that.
Yes, I agree. Although I'm fine with it.
Yeah. So, as far as the CZW thing itself, Matt, I'm wondering what you think, because my thought was basically this whole segment was not bad, but I thought it was the first CZW segment we've seen that was not better than the one before. I thought each one was kind of getting bigger and more, there was an escalation. There was getting more wrestlers involved. It was getting more over the top. We went from like Hero and Danielson and Hell Freezes over to those couple of Hero or Necro Butcher like jumping the guard, the Hero and Necro jumping the thing, and the backstage brawl, and the Necro getting into it with Cornette and Cornette throwing a punch at Necro, to the Arena Warfare giant CZW invasion. And this was more, the first time it was like, this is kind of a half step back. It's not bad, but it's just, I guess you can't go bigger every single time, but.
Yeah, they was just sort of to keep things going. It was fine. I mean, in some ways it was absolutely historic, and I'll tell you why. It's the first time I could ever remember there being an ROH crowd brawl that wasn't even slightly obscured by darkness. Like you could see all of it. It wasn't like there was nothing about it that was like difficult to see. That made it unpleasant because it was difficult to see. It was just like, oh, I guess I can just see this like normal. So in that sense, it was a pretty major segment. But besides that, yeah, I think, what it did was it introduced Claudio into the mix, which is good. Because he was sort of like the elephant in the room. Like, I remember that even at the time. I was like, are they going to acknowledge that Chris Hero's tag team partner is in CZW is just a babyface in ROH. Is that going to happen? And then they do here. So in that sense, it moved the story forward, and I guess that's all it needed to do. And the crowd really was into it, so good enough, but nothing special at all.
And Matt, I think you will find out later that the reason why you could see the crowd brawl for once, is that Ring of Honor used up their entire show long quota for segments obscured in darkness on something later in the night. So,
yes, yep. Yes. Very much yes.
Next, we will go to Christopher Daniels, escorted to the ring by Allison Danger, who, it's funny because, Allison Danger usually has very, she really prides herself in having like crazy themed getup, whether she's wearing like a latex nun's outfit or a fluffy halo above her head. Like, this is the rare time where, because she's actually gotten to have a match tonight, she's just like in, the clothes you'd wear after you just cooled off of working a wrestling match. But anyway, Christopher Daniels defeats Alex Shelley, escorted to the ring by Daisy Hayes and Prince Nana via pinfall in 14 minutes, 33 seconds after he hits the Angel's Wings. Matt, before I go to you, I'll give you something to contrast with, which is Dave Meltzer's review or live report of this match. He wrote, Christopher Daniels beat Alex Shelley in 1917. So first off, I think on the DVD and according to Cage Match, I think this match was 14:33. So either they edited it off.
Yeah, I think that was just wrong. Because I was at this show. I don't remember this match being like significantly longer than what it was.
I didn't notice any cuts. So, and it would be weird if they did. Yeah, this doesn't feel like something that would cut 5 minutes off. But anyway, Dave wrote, the first 13 minutes were a lot of stalling. It was really good at the finish with great heat. Shelley was doing a lot of Chris Jericho spots. Daniels wanted the Angel's Wings. Again, I'm told the early part comes across better on tape. Matt, you were there live. You now have watched it again on tape. What'd you think about the match?
I thought it was a good match. I thought it was good live. I thought it was good on DVD. I don't think that there was a huge difference in how it came across. There is a match later that I thought there was a pretty noticeable difference, but it's not this one. The one thing that stood out to me in this match is Daniels really seemed like he was all healed up because, he hurt himself in that Matt Sydal match, and he had kind of taken it easy the past few ROH shows. And he's really, just looking really good, athletically speaking, here in this match. And Shelley, I just have a lot of fun watching just during this era. He just really relishes his character and being a heel. And he definitely did, do some Jericho stuff at different points. I think just in response to the crowd chanting Jericho stuff at him, right?
He does the lion salt, which is something that Shelley would break out occasionally throughout his career, but then for some reason on this side the crowd chants Y2J, and so he does Jericho's stretched arm Jericho pose just to play into it at that point.
Yeah. Now, there was stalling in this match, but I didn't think it was, so over-the-top stalling. Maybe they did cut some of it out that I just don't remember. But, watching this on tape, did you notice, an absurd amount of stalling?
No, I felt like this match isn't, a high-tempo match until maybe the final minutes, but, there's a couple spots early where Shelley bails out of the ring, but Shelley did that in a lot of matches. I don't think you would call those matches those are high stalling matches.
Yeah, I mean, the Danielson match from the last show, that was a high stalling match, but not this one. There was a couple of really cool spots. There was one spot that I really, really liked, which was Daniels tries to cartwheel over Shelley during a drop down, but Shelley grabs his arm while he's cartwheeling and turns it into a wrist lock, which is a counter I can't remember ever seeing before, and I thought it was really awesome. So that's the sort of stuff that Shelley's really good at, and I like that. But yeah, by the end, they do have some fun, fast sequences, a bunch of standing switches that Shelley wins by stomping on Daniel's foot and drop kicking him. And, like you said, he does hit the Quebrada. They do some neat roll-ups down the stretch. Shelley hits a nice drop kick. Daniels hits the Blue Thunder Bomb, and then they go to their big moves. And eventually, Shelley goes for a backslide, but Daniels rolls through and hits the Angel's Wings out of nowhere. So Daniels and Danger both win tonight. I also liked that they didn't go over the top with interference, because there were 3 people at ringside. Yeah. Danger was in Daniels' corner, and Nana and Daisy Hayes were in Shelley's corner, and they didn't really, like Nana already had his interference spot earlier. He didn't have to do it again here. So they just had a match, a babyface heel match, and I thought it was a good match. Just good, but good. I liked it.
Yeah, I would agree that this is just good, but I think that's a perfect way to sum it up. So we agree on the match tonight, Matt. At least this one match we are simpatico. Although I will say, I like this match almost all due to Alex Shelley. I thought Daniels actually gave Alex a lot of the body of this match, and it was really like a one-man showcase for Shelley's personality, because we've talked about before, Shelley's just, it seems like he's having so much fun in this role, and I think this was a great match to show off Shelley doing something that I think is a really great skill for wrestlers to have, and a lot don't have, which is you're so present in matches, and you've got such a good handle on the wrestling that you're reacting to like things on the fly, like very organically. And I think this whole match, like Shelley is really great that in this whole match, Shelley's just doing lots of little personality things to react to stuff organically. Like there's there's the Chris Jericho stuff where, on the fly, he doesn't freeze when the crowd starts mocking him for the Y2J stuff. He just like leans into it, plays it up, and gets a pop. There's a great spot, like there's this fun spot early when Daniel slaps him in the face and Shelley bails to the floor, and you can hear Shelley go, "This isn't a slapping contest." And I just love that he's acting, he's talking about the things that happened to him. There's a point where Daniels has Shelley in a submission, and Nana, you can hear at ringside, is going, "Think, Shelley, think," as in like, think, about a way to get out of this. And you can just hear Alex Shelley, as he is selling in the ring in a submission hold, scream to Nana, "Think of what, Nana?" Like, I just love, I love their chemistry. And I thought the fun of this match is Shelley playing the heel who chickens out to the floor whenever he loses an exchange. It's seeing how good Shelley is at finding quick ways to regain control of the match with those little counters you talked about, the stuff like the stomping the foot or the grabbing the wrist lock out of a goddamn, cartwheel. And then, there is decent action in the final few minutes, or even Shelley spitting water in Daniel's face to start the match, like all that stuff. I just thought this match was like a one-man show for how good Alex Shelley's character work and kind of just his ability to kind of vibe with a match and just like react to things and be funny and entertaining. One last thing, Matt, on this match. There's a line on commentary that isn't that special, but for some reason it just tickled me, where Lenny Leonard on Alex Shelley says, and I quote, "How could someone with hair like that be so obnoxious?" And I guess what he meant was like, if you have like crazy yellow streak dyed ridiculous hair, like you shouldn't have the balls to be this obnoxious. But almost the way he said it, like how could someone with hair like that be so obnoxious? It also made me feel like it almost sounded like him saying like, when you have a haircut like that, you have to not be obnoxious. You have to be charming, because that's a great haircut. Like, it was a funny little thing he said, I thought.
Yeah, I would almost think the opposite is true. Like, if you have an obnoxious haircut, it probably makes it likely that you're an obnoxious person.
Exactly, yeah. And that brings us to the Ring of Honor Pure title match. Nigel McGuinness successfully defended the title when he defeats Claudio Castagnoli via pinfall in 12 minutes, 58 seconds after he hit the rebound lariat. So this would be the blow-off match to their feud. Before the match, Nigel does his usual bit where he snatches the mic away from ref Todd Sinclair as he is doing the Pure title match rules explanation. McGuinness sucks up to Todd Sinclair, telling him he thinks he's the best referee in Ring of Honor and also the world. Claudio then interrupts Nigel with a European uppercut. The match starts. Matt, we might disagree on this one. I have no idea what you feel about this match, but this was one of my least favorite matches of their series. I thought it was still enjoyable, but Nigel was fully, he had come back from a tour of Noah. He was fully Noah Nigel McGuinness at this point. And I know for a fact there are matches from more Noah-styled Nigel McGuinness that I loved. But on this night, while he's still kind of transitioning, all I noticed were the things that were that we were losing from Nigel kind of being in transition, because Nigel does not heel at all during this match. There's no comedy. There's no devious rule breaking or any kind of cheating at all. There's almost no wacky British spots. There's not even a lot of emotion in this match, which is kind of weird because it's supposed to be the blow off to a feud. It's just a lot of big strike exchanges, some professional work done by two professional wrestlers. I would say it's all well executed. It's entertaining enough, but does feel kind of soulless to me, not like a dramatic conclusion to a series of matches. It does do one thing, I would say, to raise the stakes and make it feel like a blow-off match to a feud, but it's the kind of the easiest, most standard way thing to do, which is each guy kicks out the other guy's finisher twice. So Nigel survives the Apamari water slide twice. Claudio survives 2 Towers of London. But, again, this isn't one of those matches we talked about, I think, recently. Another match that was kind of like a signpost of this, but Nigel kind of transitioning to more of a serious style. I think this is another kind of signpost match for that, in the sense of this, before we were seeing Nigel would use the Tower of London as the finisher or other moves as a finisher, and the rebound lariat was kind of like a mid-match move. And now we're seeing the change of the Tower of Londons are the near falls, and the rebound lariat is actually the finish now. So a good, decent match, but I think these guys could have significantly better. And I think I've seen these guys have matches that maybe aren't super, super duper better than this, but that I've liked more than this one.
Yeah, I mean, I think this is just a difference of, I like the Noah version of Nigel. Because to me, this is easily the best match we've seen so far between these two.
Wow.
It's honestly not even close. I didn't think that their other matches were particularly good. Or better, or at least not better than good. And I thought this match was...
Yeah, see, I like those more than you did, so this makes sense then.
Yeah, I thought this was, not quite a 4-star match, but 3.5, 3 3/4. I really like this a lot. First of all, this was another match on this show that started out hot and heavy, which, because Claudio, attacks him before the bell and stuff. And I really liked that on this show, because ROH matches, for a while, they felt like they all started the same way, with sort of the slow feeling out process. And now almost every match on this show started out not like that. Whether it's Shelley spitting the water at Daniels, or, we'll talk about the some of the tag matches later, and this match with Claudio attacking before the bell. So I like that. I like that it's, they feel like they were going for it a little bit more on this show. And yeah, and they do some wacky submissions, but yeah, it is a lot more Impact stuff. And they bust out big moves, which you don't often see on these mid-card matches in ROH. Including Claudio doing a big twisting dive over the top rope onto Nigel. How many times can you think of Claudio doing that move, period?
Yeah, not many.
Yeah, so that's pretty cool. The only real criticism I have of this match is that maybe it peaks a couple minutes too early. When they were doing their mid-ring uppercut battle that ended with the Apamari water slide that Nigel kicked out of for the second time, I feel like that was the peak of crowd interest in the match, and then it sort of just felt like it lost a little bit of momentum in the last minute or two. But that's really my only criticism. I feel like if it ended at the peak, it might have been a 4-star match for me. That's how much I liked it. I thought this was damn good. And like you said with Nigel, this was a mark of Nigel's character changing. I think the promo that we're about to see really is okay, this is the moment that Nigel introduces his new character.
Yeah, and maybe it's one of those things too where, even though again there's some Nigel matches come up that I absolutely love, but I also loved kind of more goofy heel Nigel, and I
like it too, but the matches weren't as good.
Our little boy is growing up, and I just don't want to let go of him, Matt. But I also, did you notice that the crowd chant at one point, "God save the Queen"?
Yes, so they almost were getting behind Nigel at that point.
And I guess the other thing, in terms of bluff, we should point out that Prazak on commentary actually goes as far as to say that not only is this is the last time Claudio will have an opportunity to wrestle for the pure title as long as Nigel is champ. So
yeah, and I should make mention of that. At the time, because of that stip, a lot of people both expected and wanted Claudio to win the title. And so it was a big moment when Nigel won, and it was a signal because they decided they were going to go in this big direction that Nigel introduced during his promo, which is Nigel's going to start challenging Danielson because he wants to prove that he's the better of the two technical wrestlers. And, I think this is the match where they kind of transition into that, because Nigel's not going to be on the next few ROH shows. He's going back to Noah. And then when he gets back, it's pretty much right into the first big Nigel versus Danielson match at Weekend of Champions.
Yeah, that's really interesting. It's intermission at this point. This is interesting for a different reason. Gary Michael Capetta is backstage in near total darkness, waiting for Claudio to show up after his match. I thought this was frankly embarrassing, Matt. We've seen dark segments before. There are moments of this where it is almost pitch black. Like it is embarrassing they couldn't have found a better place to shoot this, or that they even used this. I mean, it just embarrassing. We're in 2006 at this point.
Yeah, I mean, it's been embarrassing, but I think what makes it more embarrassing is they kind of had to use it because it was a really good promo, and that makes it worse.
So Claudio isn't showing up immediately because obviously he just wrestled a match. So Gary says they have a strange video from Jimmy Jacobs to show us. And what we get next, we finally have another one of those crazy things I've thought about for a long time. We finally get to talk about it. We get the Ballad of Lacey, one of the legendary bits of Ring of Honor, and a thing we'll talk about after we describe the thing. We can go into how it kind of saved Jimmy Jacobs' career. So it is basically a Jimmy Jacobs produced home music video of a song he co-wrote with some people. It is a love ballad for Lacey. It is cheesy, it is low production, and it is goofy in all the right ways. I would say the song, while not great, legit kind of gets stuck in your head. It also has the now very outdated line, "Lacey, put me in your top 8 when you MySpace me."
That makes it great because it makes it a product of its time, which I think makes it all the more charming. A much more problematic reason that a line doesn't hold up when he says, "You're the American beauty and I'm Kevin Spacey." That holds up. That doesn't hold up for a whole different reason.
Yeah, I said that. I wrote in my notes. That line wasn't great at the time and aged very poorly because obviously people might go, okay, like, guys, hey, yeah, we know now that Kevin Spacey is not a good person, but the thing about it is, even at the time, for those spoilers for people who have not seen a decades-old movie known as American Beauty, but like that movie, Kevin Spacey in that movie is a guy who like begins like a romantic, like sexual dalliance with his teenage daughter's friend, and then the movie ends with him getting murdered. Like to say like in a love song, you're the American Beauty and I'm Kevin Spacey is like, do you really know what happens there? Like it's not a loving thing, but
so now you have to put in the description for the show spoilers of the ending of American Beauty.
I will, but I get it. Lacey rhymes with Spacey, but anyway, obviously the best line of this, the one that people I think really remember, the home run line here is Jimmy singing, "There are no other candidates. Together we're the match of the year."
Yeah, that's basically like the big end point of the chorus. This is a classic song for a reason, right?
Yeah. I mean, and we get a touch of creepiness that was present in the early stages of the story, where we see Jacobs at one point in the music video is in bed in his underwear. I think it's like a leopard spot or stripe underwear, cradling a picture of Lacey as he pours hot candle wax on himself and then grinds his groin in the direction of the photo. Like, I love how in a lot of ways this is kind of a sweet song, and then it still has like that real creepy one vibe.
Right. I'm not sure that Jimmy Jacobs, when he made this, was like, oh, this is going to make me a big baby face, like, because it's clearly like self-aware in how creepy it is. And like that makes it work. It's to the fans' detriment that they've chosen to make this character their hero.
I wonder, like, my memory is terrible, but I'm wondering, like, my memory is that as this progresses and the fans get into it, they tone down the creepy element, because I think with that one segment that they shot at home with Jimmy Jacobs before this, which was kind of like this but without a song and a music video, but where he was still like talking about how much he loves Lacey and like holding her picture, like they were really playing up the Jimmy is kind of creepy and obsessed with her. But I feel like as the angle went on, they kind of toned that element down and focused more on Jimmy's this likable guy who has this huge crush on this mean girl. Where
I don't know. There are things that I remember about this angle that don't quite line up with what you're saying.
Yeah,
like, maybe there's a little bit of that, but I think it maybe kind of it ebbs and flows in terms of how creepy the character is. There's going to be a storyline later where Lacey like does a promo where she's like, "Jimmy, if you win this match, I'll get naked for you." Like stuff like that.
Yeah, which is also weird because we just had a match recently on Through the Years where like Jimmy doesn't even want people like looking or touching at Lacey at ringside. So like it's just anyway.
Yeah.
This was a great segment. So going into a bit of the backstory, give credit to our friends at the An Honorable Mention podcast. They did a whole interview with Jimmy Jacobs, and he goes into this. And obviously you guys should hunt that episode down, listen to it. But the way Jimmy tells this story is that he says February of 2006, so that would have been the month before this show, he had a conversation with Gabe about, like, what's my future with this company? Like, he wasn't really feeling like the BJ Whitmer stuff was having, tag team was having a lot of momentum, which it wasn't. And the way he describes it is Gabe tells Jimmy, you're not really you don't really have DVD selling matches, which seems to be a criticism. Gabe would offer a lot of mid-carders that were not happy with their station, because Jimmy Rave in an interview said the exact same line that Gabe told him, you don't have DVD selling matches. And basically said, like, we're going to, you're going to have the blow-off match with BJ Whitmer in the WrestleMania triple shot weekend, and then we'll see what happens. And the way Jimmy doesn't outright say this, but the way he says that, it basically sounds like Gabe was basically saying, like, I'm going to book you against BJ, and then you're probably done. Which, the way at this point, considering that he wasn't even being booked at every show anymore, that's not hard to believe. So Jimmy's thing was he felt like this was like his Hail Mary. He shoots this video, develops the song with his friends, does it all himself. And he says this was back in the day before, like, a lot of video sets. YouTube was just in the early days. And he says he recorded this on a VHS tape and mailed the tape to Gabe. He says it took weeks for Gabe to, like, see it or comment on it. He was, like, wondering, like, did Gabe even get the tape? And then one day he says Gabe just called him and says something to the effect, like, I just saw the tape. This is, like, the greatest thing I've ever seen. Like, this is so amazing. And he immediately just said to Jimmy, like, can you do this date in Philly? And Jimmy was saying, like, like, I was shocked because he had stopped booking me in the East. He was booking me mostly in the Midwest. So I think that speaks to something we've talked about before on the show, which is one thing I think that's really good element Gabe has that, like, a lot of bookers don't have, which is he can go from 0 to 60 on a guy. Like, I feel like there's a lot of bookers in wrestling history where they form an opinion of a wrestler, and that opinion then never changes. So if they think if they see nothing in a wrestler, doesn't matter if that wrestler gets over, they will always say, he still doesn't have it. And they're appeal that, like, if a guy gets over once, even if they stop being over, they just think, oh, this guy was over 2 years ago, he's still got to be good. I think Gabe had a really good ability of things like this, or we'll talk years later about the Kevin Owens thing or Kevin Steen thing, of like, he can be completely done with a guy and kind of check down, being like, yeah, we're just going to phase this guy out. And if he sees one thing from that guy that, like, sells him on him, he will completely, like, reverse course instantaneously. And I mean, true to form, he puts this promo on the DVD, something that he did not commission, that, was filmed in Jacob's house. And yeah, this promo literally saved Jimmy Jacobs' career. I think it's pretty fair to say, from everything I've heard, that Jimmy Jacobs in Ring of Honor run would probably have ended over the next few shows after that BJ Whitmer match, if not for him taking the initiative and making this promo.
Yeah, I would say that's true. Although, I mean, and I definitely don't want to downplay how big of a deal this promo was. It was huge, like, just as a fan, but also for Jimmy Jacobs, as we know. And I agree with you totally about how Gabe can be flexible on guys, and, like, what a really important and good quality that is in a booker. But as we're going to see next week, his performance in that match with BJ is also extremely memorable and star-making in its own way, possibly for unpleasant reasons. But so who knows what even just that alone would have done. But besides that, yeah, no, I think you can't really argue with what a big deal this music video was for Jimmy Jacobs.
Yeah, I mean, it's just, yeah, I agree. It would have been interesting, to see what happens to Jacobs in a world where this music video doesn't happen, but that crazy match still happens. Like, does that buy him more bookings? How does he have momentum going forward? But either way, it's funny because, again, he did that promo that was kind of had some of the creepy elements that was shot at his home like this, but it did not give him any traction with Gabe or anybody. It's the fact that the music video, how clever and unique it was. Like, I was reading the roundtable review that the Torch had of this show, and everyone on that roundtable, every single one of them is mentioning how great the Jim Jacobs music video was. Even people that normally wouldn't like. I think Bruce Mitchell even said something to the effect of, I wasn't into the Jimmy Jacobs stuff, but I like this music video is great. Like, it was something that basically won over everybody.
It was also just so, like, timely and with the zeitgeist, because wasn't this like the mainstream peak of emo music, basically, like in the mid aughts? So like it really fit the tone of the time too.
And I don't know when exactly this was uploaded to YouTube, but I remember like Jimmy talks about this in the interview. This was kind of the early days of social media, where in some ways that's kind of bad because, it wasn't maybe as prevalent as a thing as it is today. I mean, like YouTube or stuff like that even. But he did point out that like he thought one of the successes was like you did not have to compete with so much. Like if you had something on YouTube, he kind of thought was easier for something to kind of go viral. And obviously what went viral by 2006 Ring of Honor standards in terms of views is not close to what we consider viral today. But I remember like at the time it was something that, before the days of Twitter and stuff like that, it was something that was kind of like, have you seen this? Like here's the YouTube link. Like that did kind of spread a little bit.
Yep. No, definitely.
So yeah, we then come back to behind the scenes, and Gary is joined by Nigel McGuinness in again almost pure darkness. Nigel says, "Take it, look where the belt is." The camera pans down to a belt that we can barely see because it's near pitch black. Nigel talks about carrying on his win streak and going back to Noah to make the Pure title the real World's Championship belt. Nigel says he's the best Pure wrestler in the world today and asks Bryan Danielson to slap him in the face if he thinks Nigel's lying. And this is what you were talking about before, Matt. This is like the start of a more serious Nigel McGuinness, and also basically this is the very start of a Nigel Danielson feud.
Yeah, I mean, I really, really was a fan of this promo. Too bad I couldn't see it.
It's a great radio promo, but
and also, again, this is a very calculated, deliberate change in the character, and spoiler alert, it is going to work. Nigel will become more over and a bigger star because of this change.
Yeah, and also it's doing something that Gabe wanted to do, I think, since day one with the Pure title, which is he was teasing that right from the start with AJ Styles and Samoa Joe, which is always from the start wanted to do the idea of like a war, like a feud between the Pure champ and the world champ. And obviously AJ leaving kind of sidetracked that, and then the Pure title kind of became more of a mid-card title than it seemed like Gabe's original intent was. But now, when we're months away from the Pure title going away, we're kind of ending kind of fittingly where I feel like more close to what Gabe's kind of original vision for this was, which was the Pure champion being like, yeah, this is as good as the world title. Like, if you think you have a problem with that, like, prove it against me. That kind of stuff.
Yeah, and like, you couldn't have asked to do it with two guys with better chemistry than Danielson and McGuinness, to the point where once they're done with the Pure title, their feud continues into what I would argue is, in terms of running over the course of years and staying consistently good, the greatest feud of that decade in ROH. The greatest rivalry, I'll say, not feud, between McGuinness and Danielson. They just ended up having so many great matches against each other over the course of years, and we're getting fairly close to the first one, so I'm pretty excited about that.
Yeah, that's one, honestly, that first one that's coming. Well, not the first one, actually. The second one that would be Unified.
Third one. That would be the third one.
Okay, third one. Oh, yeah. I mean, I can't wait to talk about that match. That's just a very special match to me in a lot of ways. But that brings us to the first match back from intermission, which is not a special match to me in a variety of ways. Austin Aries defeated Ricky Reyes, scored to the ring by Julius Smokes, by disqualification in 11:26 when Reyes would not release a Dragon Sleeper despite Aries getting to the ropes. The Observer, Dave wrote in The Observer, of course the crowd hated the disqualification, but at least this wasn't just a DQ to avoid someone doing a job, but a way to tell the story that Aries can't break Reyes' choke finisher for when he's involved in the tag title scene.
Well, thank God we tell that story.
On the edge of my seat, Matt. And then Wade Keller, in his review, I thought did a good way. In my review, when I was writing my notes, I was trying to figure out what's another way to keep talking about Ricky Reyes. I think Wade Keller had a good kind of way of talking about it. He wrote this review of of this match. He wrote, the disappointment of the show was Aries versus Reyes. There's just something missing with Reyes at this point, but I can't put my finger on it. Aries' look has really advanced over the past year, and even since his TNA dates. First off, Matt, has Aries' look really changed that much? Maybe he's mildly changed his facial hair?
Well, no, I mean, the difference in his look is he's beefier. Like he's
He's put on some muscle.
And he cut his hair much shorter. Like, he started doing that the previous summer, but, when Aries was first getting over in ROH, he had longer hair.
So, anyway, Wade continues. Aries has a more serious fighter appearance, which really suits his style. Some really good exchanges, but something was missing to bring to the next level. Reyes has talent, but he hasn't put it all together yet. 2.5 stars. Matt, what did you think about this match?
This was spoilers, the only match on the show that didn't work for me. It wasn't like bad, but it was boring. They tried to be intense with their mat work, and, Reyes certainly was kicking hard. They were hitting each other hard. At one point, Smokes, and I always love when Smokes yells something a little bit different. He goes, so Aries has Reyes on the ground, and he's like over him, and Smokes yells, "Hey, Ricky, punch him in his mouth right now," which is very hard to do when the guy that you want him to punch is standing up and the guy you want to do the punching is lying down. It's not easy to punch someone in the face at that moment. Also, did you notice, maybe I'm wrong, is this the first time that Aries does the knee drop and then he rolls backwards and does the slow motion version of it? Have we seen that yet in ROH?
One of my favorite things that happens on this podcast is when I have a thing in my notes, I'm going to ask you, and then you ask me, and I basically say, well, I must be right then if Matt's also asking me, because I was going to ask you, is that the first time we've seen that in Ring of Honor?
I'm almost positive, and he does make that a fairly regular spot going forward.
I might be wrong about this, but I vaguely recall he might have done that in that CZW match, that we just talked about on the last show, where he goes and main events that CZW show.
Gotcha.
Maybe he got the idea there to kind of rib the crowd, and he was just like, oh, this is like a cool spot,
So it's the debut in ROH at least.
Yeah. I can't remember this ever happening before, in Ring of Honor at least, before this match.
Yeah. I'd say the work here is solid. Aries does a pretty nice heat-seeking missile, and I get the idea of the finish. Thank goodness after the finish, they transition immediately to the next match. Very smart, because the crowd hated the finish.
Yeah.
And they get over it within seconds. So that was very smart booking. But yeah, I agree with Wade, honestly. This match, there's just something missing, and it just didn't really click.
I maybe like this match very slightly more than you and Wade. Maybe instead of 2.5 stars of Wade's giving, I would give it 2.75.
Wow, big
I know that's very slight, but I would just say, all my enjoyment in this match comes from Austin Aries. Austin Aries is really over, and I thought, Austin Aries is a prickly kind of personality sometimes, and sometimes he can see pretty grumpy even in the ring. This was a match where I rarely have seen Austin Aries, it seemed like he was really having a lot of fun and was in a good mood. Maybe I'm wrong about that, but he was kind of just really playing babyface here well. He, having fun with stuff like the slow motion, instant replay knee drop and all, and he was just hitting his usual stuff and hitting it well. They even did a little spot where, instead of jumping out of a head scissors, doing the usual Aries jumps out of a head scissors and does a drop kick to his opponent's face. Reyes just gets Aries in another head scissors, and then he goes for the drop kick, and Reyes dodges that, and then does a face lock, and then Aries kind of does a version of the drop kick counter out of that. I just thought, hey, you're kind of changing things up, and Aries even takes a couple big bumps, I would say, for a Saito suplex and a Japanese arm drag into the corner. But yeah, it's also Reyes, and Reyes, I've talked to him a lot. It's just, he feels like a video game wrestler to me. He has a handful of moves, some kicks, couple suplexes, couple submissions, his running knee. He just spams them out. What he does in minute 3 of a match feels like the same things he might do at minute 9 of a match, just a different order. He's the Taco Bell wrestler. He's always got the same handful of ingredients. He just puts them in slightly different configurations in a way that doesn't really feel big. I don't know. It's just, his basic mechanics are good, but yeah, he is missing a lot of things to me. But anyway, the match ends with that, Reyes won't release the choke. After the match, Reyes refuses to release it, and the crowd chants bullshit until Jack Evans and Roderick Strong come from backstage and run Ricky off. The Briscoes almost immediately jumped them. We have our match. I mean, this was on the card, but it is starting without entrances, without anything big. And that would be Generation Next of Jack Evans and Roderick Strong defeating the Briscoes of Jay and Mark in 19 minutes, 29 seconds when Evans pins Mark Briscoe after hitting the Phoenix Splash variation of Ode to the Bulldogs. The Observer would write, Strong and Evans being Mark and Jay Briscoe may have been even better than the main event, with a fast-paced big move match with lots of near falls. Strong was chopping the Briscoes raw. Evans splashed off Strong's shoulders onto one of the brothers for the pin. On tape, I'm told both matches are equally as good, but entirely different style matches, with this match faster and more big moves. To me, on paper, this is a dream match. This is the Briscoes, maybe the greatest indie tag team, or maybe one of the greatest tag teams, period, of their generation, against, to me, one of the most underrated tag teams of their generation in Jack and Roddy, simply because they didn't get a long, extended run anywhere, really. And it's just two teams, they go balls to the wall. Apart from two sequences during the match where Evans got isolated, has leg worked over a bit, this is nothing but crazy action. Matt, I would say the word I would use to describe this match is relentless. It just keeps going and going with big move after big move, double team after double team. It starts early. It never really stops. I'm sure you'll just go into a lot of the moves in the match. And like I always say, big spot fest tags, they're the type of match where the bar's been raised so much in the last 16 years, and so many tags now are faster than this is and smoother, and maybe even put together like pre-planned more intricately to have more big spots that in a way that flows without pauses. But this match felt slightly ahead of its time. Like, it really is kind of balls to the wall in a way that a lot of matches aren't. Of this, at least with workers of this caliber. They didn't lead to the crowd, but they almost got to the point where in the last couple minutes, I got this feeling of like things weren't quite getting, and we'll get that in the main event too. They were getting still big pops, but not quite the big pops I felt that they deserved. It was almost that thing that would become a criticism of Ring of Honor in the future, that feeling of, you can kind of feel the crowd going, wow, they've done a lot. Maybe we're good now. You're doing a lot here. But that doesn't matter, because I thought this match was great. I would give this like 4.25 stars. One of the best matches we've seen in Ring of Honor so far in 2006. There are so many spots here, primarily from Jack and Roddy, that you just hadn't seen in Ring of Honor before. Stuff that would be match highlights, and they're just cranking one of them out after another. The Briscoes are machines. I like them breaking out the spinning toe hold in figure 4. Even I thought that was cool stuff to see in the context of like a crazy spot match. Jack Evans was in a stage of his career where he's trying to add a lot more kicks, which was a big improvement over him trying to throw really bad-looking elbows and forearms. Jack had a couple spots where it looked like he almost killed himself. And if there is a big flaw in this match, I would say it's the end, because Jack gets almost none of Mark on the Ode to the Bulldogs. Like he
lands on his head, which I mean was a flaw for Mark, but in terms of making the move look effective, I don't know.
I mean, he basically gets his hand and arm out and catches Mark in the face with it. But overall, I thought he looked great. In some ways, I thought he was the MVP of a match like this. We can talk more about the moves and stuff, but I should just hand it over to you. It's just a big, crazy move spot fest. I really, really like this.
Yeah, so if you want me to list the moves, I got you on that. But before I do that, so live, this match completely blew me away. Because it was, like you said, just move, move, move. Oh my God, oh my God, oh my God. On video, I noticed flaws with it a little bit more. Like, there was some sloppiness, some pacing issues. It takes a really long time for it to settle into any sort of like momentum. It really just back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. Like tags you think are supposed to be hot tags, but then they're not. And then finally, in the last 6 minutes, they get the heat on Jack Evans. And they kind of take over on him until they get to build to a really good hot tag by Roderick. So I maybe didn't totally like it quite as much as you, but I still thought it was really, really good. But like you said, it absolutely is just like moves right at the beginning. Because like I said, at the very beginning, the crowd is just pissed because of the finish of the previous match. So very, very smartly booked. The Strong and Evans make the save, and then the Briscoes come out. Mark immediately does this crazy dive onto Strong, while almost like a split second after Mark lands, you see like on the corner of the camera, Jack Evans springboarding it onto the top rope and doing Rana onto Jay, which is just like the crowd has already forgotten about the finish. They're just into this match now. And, the Briscoes target Jack's leg to ground him pretty early. Jay does a big spine buster and then slingshots Jack into Mark's boot in the corner. So they dominated him. Jack comes back with this wacky reversal evasion thing that leads to Jay clotheslining Mark. And then Roderick presses Jack into Mark, who's sitting in the corner. This all happens within like a minute or two. So there's more double teaming. Jack does, he almost does a springboard, but then flips backwards and then does another springboard, flipping forwards and doing a flip onto the Briscoes and onto Strong, honestly, on the floor. Then he does this really cool handstand kick and a jumping double knee drop onto Mark, like almost like a double stomp, but it's his knees. So now already the Generation Next are in control for a few minutes, not for long, because then the Briscoes do this combo where Mark gets a 2 count after a twisting senton off the middle rope onto Strong. And then Strong immediately comes back with a belly-to-back springboard neck-breaker combo with Jack's help. So again, just tons of momentum shifts. At one point, Strong backdrops Evans onto Jay Briscoe and then does a standing moonsault himself, followed by a standing twisting press by Jack. I don't think that Strong ever really made the standing moonsault part of his repertoire, but he could definitely do one.
Yeah.
So Jay and Mark do some double teams of their own. Big kick to the back and then a big boot to the front by Mark and Jay on Strong. At one point, Mark slaps Strong in the face and they end up just pounding on each other until Mark powers him up with a gut wrench and a big jumping knee. And cleverly, Mark pulls Strong to the Briscoes' corner before covering. I always like the little touches that the Briscoes do like that.
Yeah.
Because not every team does that. And I also noticed that Evans is adding definitely a lot more kicks to his arsenal. And then he hits a standing 450 for 2. Then Mark catches Jack and just drops down into a leg lace, but Strong grabs Evans' arm and pulls him into the corner. At one point they pull out some old school with Mark doing a classic Indian deathlock onto Evans. And at that point, they finally start getting some heat on Evans for a while. They set Jack up in the Shattered Dreams position, and Jay does a running kick to Jack's leg. Jay does a spinning toe hold at one point, and a figure 4, which we don't see too often from the Briscoes. They even do the spot where Mark kind of grabs at Jay's arm while in the figure 4, which is fun until Keener catches it and kicks Mark's arm away. Eventually, Evans comes back with a sudden moonsault off the middle rope. This is where some of the sloppiness comes in because when Jack does that moonsault, Jay sort of has to run forward to make sure that Evans catches him with the moonsault. Mm-hmm. But then Jack makes the hot tag, and Strong at this point to me is the best hot tag guy they have at this point. He comes in, hits good chops, backdrops, kicks, including this really awesome drop kick to Jay, tiger driver on Mark. He does the spot where he's going to drop Jack onto Mark's back where Mark is lying over the middle rope, but Jay cuts it off. Strong gets the inverted atomic drop and sick kick on Jay before lifting Evans into this twisting press on Jay for a 2 count. Eventually, Mark hits a fisherman's buster on Jack, puts Jay on top of him, but Jack kicks out. And the Briscoes hit the springboard doomsday device. Strong breaks that up. Then Strong hits the double knees on Jay, half Nelson backbreaker on Mark, and they go right to the Ode to the Bulldogs Phoenix splash, like you mentioned, with Evans basically landing on Mark's face for the pin. So yeah, super fun match live, very fun match on video too. I don't know that I'd go quite as high as you, but it was really, really good. Definitely a match that anybody watching now today would still get a kick out of.
Yeah, and I do agree with you that there are flaws in this match, and I do feel like maybe people that haven't watched this era might not like it as much as me, or even you didn't like it quite as much as me. I think it's still enjoyable, even if you didn't come up in this era, but I feel it isn't quite as fast or as smooth as a lot of the spot fest tags we see today, but I think it's still fun even by today's standards, and also at the standards of the day, just watching every Ring of Honor show in order, this really did feel like state of the art for Ring of Honor at this time. Like, we've seen big, crazy, like, scramble undercard matches, but in terms of, like, really talented guys on the top of the card, you know, in a big position, just going this nuts, I felt like this was kind of, oh, this is like a new level for Ring
Here's
of
the
Honor.
one negative about that. Yes, this is state of the art for ROH at this time. It does take it to a new level, and in less than 1 week, it will be basically made completely antiquated by what we see on the Dragon Gate matches.
Yeah, which is kind of, it's sad because, yeah, yeah, you are absolutely right about that, which we will get to soon. But immediately after the match, the crowd gives all four men an extended standing ovation, which, you know, you did not always see the standing ovation in Ring of Honor, followed by a big ROH chant. Roddy carries Evans over his shoulder to the back. Roddy's just done. And Prazak says, Cabana and Homicide are out of action tonight due to the brawl they had on the streets after the last show that had no cameras around, but they do have a video from Cabana, and they're about to show it. So, first of all, in the last show that we talked about on Arena Warfare, like, oh, they teased a brawl between Cabana and Homicide, and it never happened, I guess, because of the CZW angle. So instead, they're saying in storyline, no, it did happen. We just didn't have cameras that caught it. So,
yeah, I like that little touch.
Yeah. So next, we see Colt Cabana backstage somewhere. I mean, I guess not here because he wasn't at the show, where he talks about the Drano incident, and we get a little circle in the top right corner of the screen showing the Drano incident happening, which is almost like a cartoon thought bubble for Colt Cabana, which made me laugh, even though that wasn't their intention. Colt says he can't stop thinking about it and how he now knows he could die at any time. He said Homicide gave him the idea that he can be scared of death. Colt says since then he's had a constant fear. He can either run away from that fear and the profession that he loves, or he can get in that ring and fight. Colt says he can do the most important thing he can do, and that's conquer that fear. He compares it to driving after getting in a car accident, or playing baseball again after getting beamed by a fastball, or getting bitten by a dog and losing an index finger and then seeing another dog one day. Colt says that's the kind of constant fear that consumes your life. It never lets you rest. Colt won't stop thinking about what kind of fear this is. Colt says he now feels that fear every time he goes into a venue. Colt says you can quit baseball and you can stay away from all dogs, or you can face that fear. Colt says he's decided to pet the dog walking down the street and confront his fear. Colt starts giving a screaming sell job to his and Homicide's upcoming feud-ending matches. Matt, this promo, I mean, some of the Colt Cabana promos during this feud have been very good. This might have been the worst. It was overlong. It was very overwrought. And the constant comparing this to, like, comparing fighting Homicide to petting a dog again. It was just, it made me laugh I don't think that was its intention.
Yeah, the first reaction I had was, it must be nice, Colt, to have not had a fear of death until this Homicide thing, because you and I, that's just all we ever think about.
Yeah,
so
I don't need someone to pour a caustic chemical down my throat to make me afraid. Like, I look in the mirror and I'm afraid of death.
Absolutely. Same here. The other thing is, so Colt tried really, really hard here. He put everything into this, you could tell.
Yeah.
But my takeaway from this is, it's not surprising to me that Colt Cabana didn't try to do more of this in his career. You know what I mean? It's just not his thing. Bless him, bless his heart, he tried. But this is not Colt's forte. But he does recap the angle and explain his motivation, so I guess it was effective in that way.
I mean, I agree that this is not his forte. I will say he has had better series promos that we have liked.
Yeah,
than this.
but nothing that was like, oh my god, he needs to do more of this.
But on the other hand, we've also never, I don't think I've seen in Ring of Honor a wacky Colt Cabana promo that is close to this kind of not good. So yeah, definitely not his strong suit. But that brings us to the main event. Kenta and Naomichi Marufuji defeated Bryan Danielson and Samoa Joe in 33 minutes, 34 seconds, when Kenta pinned Danielson after he hit go to sleep. The Observer's live reports on this, Dave would write, The match went 33-36, and most accounts were that it was really good in the 4-star range. Most reports range from 3 3/4 to 4 1/4, but not a match of the year, and actually disappointing to some. The knocks were that it probably would have been excellent at 25 minutes, but Kenta and Marufuji did long heat spots that kind of dragged. Those who have seen it on tape have said it was too slow-paced early for the live crowd, but it comes across as a better match on tape because the building of a match is usually better on tape than live for a high spot-hungry crowd, and also because live, Kenta is so much over than Marufuji that when Marufuji was in, it felt like the crowd was just waiting for Kenta to tag in. Others felt it followed an incredible tag match, Roderick Strong and Jack Evans versus the Briscoes, and that this match appears to have been booked more for a story of making Kenta a challenger for Danielson, he pinned the ROH champ with the go to sleep, than anything else, as well as Danielson and Joe not being good partners with Danielson not wanting to tag in. Kenta and Joe refused to shake hands, and they kind of played off the idea they did an angle at the AAA Rey de Reyes show the week before. They may do a singles match as well. Matt, what do you think about the match? I disagree with some of the things in that review, but we can get to that when it's my turn. But Matt, this was the main event. Obviously, for those who don't know the era, Kenta and Marufuji were like the big worldwide tag team in Noah, not just Noah, but, like from people that really watch tapes, kind of the team, and, team up against the two greatest wrestlers maybe in Ring of Honor history. This was a dream match. Again, another dream tag on top of the card.
And this is why they called the show Best in the World, because these were, like, in a lot of people's minds, the 4 best in the world, like, bar none at this point.
Yeah.
So, like, that's a pretty special match. And, at the beginning, you could tell the crowd is ready for this to be, like, a really special match. The entrances, the reactions, it's treated like a really big deal. I will agree with one thing that Dave said in the recap, which is this match did come across better on tape than it did live, in the sense of, like, live I was like, oh my god, that Evans and Strong versus the Briscoes match was like the match to beat, and like the main event was slightly disappointing in comparison. On video, I actually like this one a little bit more than the other one. And I think it is for some of the reasons that Dave mentioned. Not to say that there aren't flaws in this match, and which I'll get to, but the thing that I notice here first right off the bat is Danielson, and I mentioned this, I think, during the Rave match, he sort of has 2 modes right now. He has the over-the-top, arrogant, heelish mode, and then he has the serious, more like Japanese wrestler mode, and he's more in the Japanese wrestler mode here. He's not doing as much of the crowd work. There's a little bit, but he really dials it back a lot. Especially in the pre-match, and I think he's kind of goaded into being more of the character later, but like when he's when he teases tagging in Joe and then he doesn't do it. But it really is a lot of just him just being a serious, intense wrestler, not really being so much of a heel. In fact, at certain points in the match, almost Kenta and Marufuji act a little bit heelish, almost like a little bit like kind of punks.
Marufuji threatens to punch the ref at one point.
Yeah, and there's a taunting of Joe. The thing about this match that I thought was interesting, everybody talks about this match just to build up Kenta versus Danielson, because that is what they build to, right? The big match in September. Mm-hmm. But don't you think the match they were teasing more than anything was Kenta versus Joe? Like,
that was the main focus of this match, and that's the match you come away wanting to see, not Danielson Kenta. I mean, I want to see that too. And going to, again, Dave's note, again, if I just look over that, he writes here, they may do a singles match as well between Kenta and Joe, and saying that they did an angle in AAA the week before. But I think we also read recently that they said a story, or maybe I got in my notes that's coming up, but I think I already read it on one of the shows, that they weren't going to do Kenta versus Joe because Noah didn't want Kenta to lose to Joe, and Ring of Honor didn't want Joe to lose to Kenta. But yet here, if you watch this match, I would have come away from watching this match being convinced that Kenta versus Joe is happy in the next few months.
To the point where you talk about how Joe versus Low Ki 2 was the big lost ROH match. At this point, to me, it's I almost think that Kenta versus Joe is the match. If I had to choose between which two I wanted to happen more, it would have been this one, because did they ever have a singles match anywhere?
I don't know.
I think you would know if they had it. So I'm thinking they didn't.
Yeah, and they didn't have it in Ring of Honor. I mean,
right. But I'm saying that if that match happened, it would have gotten notoriety. And I don't think they ever did. And it's like, so Joe and Loki, I think if they wrestled again, like there could have been some issues with it, like in the sense of like we saw the Danielson Loki 2 match, just Loki was a different wrestler
Yeah.
than what he was in 2002. I think Joe and Kenta, if they just let it all hang out, they would have had just a bomb match. You know what I mean? Not like a bomb like a match bombs, but like just like this match is the bomb, you know? Because even their sequences here, like there's a lot of teasing for Joe really wanting to tag in. When he finally does, they start kicking the crap out of each other and slapping each other, and every single thing they do together is awesome. And yeah, maybe that's because they don't have to do much, you know, like they just do a lot of teases basically and leave you wanting a lot more. But the crowd goes nuts for all of it. It's really awesome. So I don't know. I feel like that I really wish we had that match. But as far as the rest of the match, there is a lot. You know, Danielson really works like almost the whole match for his team. And they do, you know, it is slow at times. In fact, there's this one point in the middle, and it jogged my memory. I remember this from being there live. There's this like weird hum in the background. I don't know if you noticed it.
Yeah, I did.
You were watching? Yeah, so like it was really distracting in the building. And I think it was gone by the end of the match. I don't remember.
So that was
for
in
sure.
the building and not on like the DVD. That's like a sound you heard in the building.
Yes, and I don't remember if I knew what it was at the time, but I don't know if it had something to do with the like the pressurized roof or something. I'm just assuming, but I don't actually know. But it was very distracting, and I think that hurt the crowd heat a little bit, just a little bit. But as far as the match, I thought the work was pretty good throughout. It was, you know, even though it was long, it wasn't super hot the whole way through, but I thought it was good. There were some cool spots. There was one point actually that I noticed. I don't know if you picked up on this. I don't know if when you watched, but there's this one point where Danielson does this really deep half crab on Marufuji where he cranks back and he sticks his tongue out while doing it.
Yeah.
And it reminded me of Daniel Garcia. I don't know if you picked up on that at all.
I didn't pick up the Daniel Garcia thing, but I thought, like, it's so crazy because you never see Danielson do that. Like, he sticks his tongue out so well. He's basically doing, like, the "was up" guy from the Budweiser commercial. Yeah. Like, he's really hanging tongue here.
But doesn't Garcia do that? Doesn't Garcia do that when he cranks back on that sharpshooter?
It's weird because if he is picking that, like, I'm not saying you couldn't be right. You might.
No, I mean, I don't think he's trying to copy Danielson because I think it's like this is just this one match. But yeah, I just thought it was a weird parallel that I noticed.
Yeah, and we do know. I mean, they outright say on commentary that Danielson is Garcia's favorite wrestler, Graham. So I mean, I have to imagine Daniel Garcia has seen this match. So
yeah, I mean, it could be. I mean, there are other wrestlers who do that more, but I just thought, you know, it was interesting. Speaking of the half crab, there was one point on commentary where Prazak mentioned that Lance Storm was, quote, considering coming out of retirement to challenge Danielson for the belt. And that, you know, he does a promo at the end of the DVDs, alluding to something similar, but like that match is in a week. So hopefully he was doing more than considering at this point. Like, yeah, it's 3 DVDs away, but it's only 1 week away in real time. And I just thought that was interesting. But like, but yeah, and so like eventually the match does pick up a few times at the end. You know, they do hit some big moves. Kenta holds Danielson in a camel clutch while Marufuji gets this like momentum back and forth. It hits a running drop kick in Danielson's face. When Joe takes a lot of abuse on the apron in this match. Like, he's just standing on the apron and like Kenta kicks him in the face and takes him to the outside. Marufuji attacks him. Like, Joe is just really getting, you know, repeatedly attacked on the apron until finally, dramatically, Danielson hits a roaring forearm and tags in Joe. And Joe does a good hot tag. He does a big belly-to-belly on Marufuji, bunch of kicks to Kenta, inverted atomic drop, and a big kick and a senton on Kenta while yelling, motherfucker, as he drops on him for a 2 count. Really good hot tag. But then things settle down again. You know, Danielson comes back in. Joe does the power bomb into the STF and on Marufuji while Danielson is sort of like running interference by like trying to stop Kenta from getting into the ring, which I thought was a nice spot. Then Joe holds Marufuji so Danielson could hit a diving headbutt. They do the roll up sequence with Danielson and Marufuji just like they did in the title match. And, you know, the exact cradle that Danielson pinned Marufuji in, but this time Marufuji kicks out. I like that. They do, so Marufuji does the Shiranui, which is the sliced bread number 2, and Danielson does the exact thing he did with Alex Shelley, where he rolls through into the cattle mutilation. So, like, it was like, oh, not only is this move not Danielson's weakness, it's the exact opposite of his weakness. He has the perfect counter for it. But then Marufuji hits another one and actually gets it and gets a 2 count. Then Joe and Kenta battle outside while Marufuji hits the coast-to-coast dropkick on Danielson. And Marufuji goes for the super Shiranui off the top rope. But Danielson escapes that, hits the belly-to-back superplex. And they're both down. Joe and Kenta make their way back to the apron. Both guys make the big hot tags. And so Kenta hits another big boot to Joe. Big running kick. Kenta hits his kick combo and the springboard drop kick for a 2. Kenta hits the tornado throat drop over the top rope and a big jumping clothesline for 2. Goes for a falcon arrow, but Joe just drops him on his face, goes for the muscle buster. Marufuji breaks that up. Kenta hits his big like slaps and kicks, and Joe comes back with slaps of his own. And Kenta hits a big kick to the head, and then Joe takes him down with a big clothesline. So I think that was like the most substantial sequence the two of those guys had. Of course, the crowd goes nuts when they're finally down, and I don't know how, if you could watch that, I don't know how you don't want to see those two wrestle in a singles match. But Danielson's back in. He starts kicking away at Kenta, and the ROH team takes turns chopping Kenta. I feel like there's a little bit of momentum loss at this point. There's an interesting spot, like Danielson, he calls Joe over to help him attack Kenta, and Joe just goes over to the apron, and he sees Danielson calling him, and I don't know what he says to him, but basically he says, like, no. I don't know. Did you notice that?
Yeah, I don't know. Like, to me, I guess that was their dissension because that moment is Danielson like calls him like Joe had just tagged out after taking some abuse, and Danielson's like, get back in, Joe, like do some double teams with me, and like Joe does like one little thing, and then he goes on the back to the apron, and then Danielson keeps like, come on, Joe, do more stuff, and Joe's just like won't do it. And to me, I guess I thought that was, I don't know how intentional. I thought the story of that was basically that just like Joe was too hurt and Danielson's going to get a little pissed off because like he wants Joe to keep helping him, but Joe's not going to come out anymore.
Yeah, I couldn't tell because it was so understated that I was almost like, oh, maybe like they just had an actual miscommunication and Joe was like, no, we're not doing that spot. Something like that. That's almost how I interpreted it. But yeah, it could have been either way. But anyway, Danielson continues to work over Kenta. He gets the cattle mutilation, then flips into that cattle mutilation cradle. Kenta kicks out. Danielson goes for the chicken wing. Kenta escapes that, but Danielson hits the regal plex for a 2 count. And Marufuji breaks that up, but Joe throws him to the outside and hits the elbow suicida. Then Danielson goes up to the top. Kenta leaps up, hits the super falcon arrow for a 2 count. Kenta goes for the go to sleep. Danielson turns that into a crucifix for a 2. Then goes right into the big elbows. But Kenta picks Danielson up out of that position and hits the go to sleep. Gets the win. Like, yeah, there were slow parts in the middle, but I don't know if you heard me describe that last sequence. It lasted a long time, and it was very exciting. So I thought this was a great match. Yes, maybe disappointing in that maybe you would think these guys would have like one of the greatest matches of all time, and this was not that. But it was a damn great match, and one of the best matches in ROH so far this year. Definitely, to me, more than 4 stars. I don't know exactly what I'd rate it, but it would be over 4 stars.
Yeah, for me, I one thing I do agree with the Dave Live notes is I agree that I would put this match on the level of Jack and Roddy and the Briscoes, but for obviously a completely different kind of match. I would give this like 4.25. I think this is great. But I agree with you. It is not a match of the year contender, and it's one of the, these guys are so good. This is the rare kind of match where like a match could be this good and you're still slightly, just great and be a slightly disappointed because, yeah, like you said, these guys have it in them, you would think, to have like a match of the year, all match of the couple years.
Yeah. And I will just reiterate, this was definitely better on tape than it was live. Like, it was fairly disappointing live, and then you watched it back and I was like, oh damn, like this they do a lot. This was kind of awesome, you know.
See, we're always talking about expectations, and because I read those reviews before I watched the match of like the crowd kind of the match losing some of the crowd, like my expectation was the crowd was really going to be quiet for this. I didn't feel like the crowd ever, at least watching on tape, ever turned on this match. Like I felt they were always popping, they were always invested, but I did feel like as it got on to the match, again, it was another one of those matches that had that bit of that vibe where some spots late as the match went on, it got to a point after probably like 20 or something minutes in where I felt like some things that I felt should have gotten a bigger reaction. Kind of, if something should have gotten an 8 out of 10 reaction in my mind, it was getting like a 6. Like it did feel like maybe the crowd was just kind of like getting a little burnt out on maybe period on the whole show. I don't know.
Yeah, and I do think that weird noise kind of hurt it a little bit. I really do. Like it's kind of weird to say, but I actually think that.
But I thought this was a great match. Obviously, just really, really well done. But yeah, and we talked about the start. The highlights of this match are Joe versus Kenta, and they're really the story of the match because right from the start of the match, you know, before the start of the match, they won't even everyone will shake each other's hands except Joe and Kenta won't shake each other's hands. So they're building up that tension right from the start. And Kenta is just classic Kenta here. For people that don't know, like younger Kenta, he was just such a surly little prick. And in this match, even as a babyface, like, you know, you went over the spots, but like there are spots in this match where when Kenta tags in, he will just immediately run and attack and cheap shot Joe as he's standing on the apron as the illegal man. Like, and Joe will become furious. Like Kenta is just gonna, you know, Kenta. The story of this match is Kenta and Joe hate each other, and Kenta's gonna like stick it to Joe however he can. And there are points in this match where, you know, Kenta maybe is bordering on two-step. Like there is a roundhouse kick he throws to Joe that catches Joe like in the face. He slaps him super hard in the face, and that seems to bring it out of Joe to come back at him with it. I didn't even think that there are slow parts of this match where, you know, Danielson and Marufuji are both play the face, or they're the guy getting worked on for the hot tag, and which again points to how much of this match was built around Joe and Kenta, where they're never the face in peril in this match. And those sequences, I can see why people would think they slowed down, but I thought the work was always engaging enough. Even those sequences, I was never bored for a minute in this match. Like, even those sequences, I thought the work was good enough, and the partners were tagging out enough that I was always invested in this match. It did not feel like a 33-minute match to me. I loved the little callbacks Danielson did with the Shiranui counter, which he did against Alex Shelley, and also Marufuji kicks out of the cradle that, you know, he lost to Danielson to at a final battle. Like, so I love the little callbacks. And, you know, they hit a lot of their big stuff. So if you just came to see them hitting their big stuff, like the coast to coast drop kick, the go to sleep, the jumping on the top rope, doing the super falcon arrow, like if you just came because you wanted to see Kenta and Marufuji do like their signature stuff live, you got to see a lot of their big stuff. But as a match, I thought was really good too. It just, does miss that match of the year level. There are points of this match that do kind of feel like more of the, like just we're an exhibition dream match as opposed to like Kenta. It's hard to explain, but like Kenta Kobashi and Samoa Joe did not feel like an exhibition dream match. It felt like something special. Like it felt when they were wrestling like it was the most important match in the world. This doesn't quite have that feeling. It's more of that kind of disconnected dream match, even with the Joe Kenta emotion. But I still thought this was great. And I'm just looking at my notes, but there's only so many superlatives I can throw at this match. Anyway, after the match, the crowd gives another standing ovation. On commentary, Prazak wonders if this makes Kenta due for a Ring of Honor World title shot. Joe shakes Marufuji's hand, but again, he won't shake Kenta's hand even after the match. Joe grabs a bottle of water to try and revive Danielson, who's been selling being completely knocked out from the go to sleep. But when he sees Kenta, at the same point as he's grabbing the water, he sees Kenta grabs the Ring of Honor title belt from the ref. And so Joe angrily throws the water bottle at Kenta. He grabs the belt away from Kenta. Kenta's theme goes on and on during this segment, which starts to drive you insane because Kenta's theme is just this one very short loop.
I'm glad I wasn't the only one who noticed this. It's just like, what time is it?
Yeah, that's basically the entire thing, and you hear it like then like 100 times. Like it's not like a theme song where it's 3 minutes long. You go, oh, the song's starting again. It's like a 20-second loop that is, or if that just goes and goes and loops. But anyway, Kenta grabs the mic and he says, "What's up, New York City? I can promise one thing. I'll be back soon. Thank you." And then Joe grabs the mic and says, Kenta has to remember one thing, that he's never beaten Danielson in singles matches, and Kenta sure as hell is never going to beat Samoa Joe. Joe then calls Kenta a bitch and leaves, and then Kenta, in the great comeback, after just saying pretty damn good English, that last little spiel, Kenta grabs the mic and goes, "Hey Joe, I can't understand English."
Yeah, that was a great comeback, yeah.
Yeah, and the crowd chants for Kenta, and they finally, after a few minutes here, recovered. Danielson gets up, he shakes Marufuji and Kenta's hand. So again, they're really selling your, again, everything about this would make you think they're building to a Kenta-Joe singles match, because they're really selling this idea of, Danielson's fine with these guys. It's Joe that has the real problem with Kenta. Like, they can't stand each other. And, but yeah, we never get that. But
we do get the three-way.
Yeah.
And that match has its problems, which we will talk about.
Oh, yeah. I have to assume that was basically Gabe Goring. This is the closest I can get to that. So
yeah, exactly.
We cut to Lance Storm backstage again somewhere, because it wasn't at this show. Lance says Bryan Danielson has an open contract for the Ring of Honor World title, and that's a match that could get him out of retirement. So
better get in there quick, because you don't have much time to train, man.
Yeah, speaking to what Matt said earlier, we're
literally 7 days after this.
And then finally, in the last segment, we cut to the embassy of Jimmy Rave, Alex Shelley, and Prince Nana backstage. Nana's furious over Bruce Leroy. Shelley asks why his plane ticket for February 11th was canceled, which was unscripted too. Rave wonders, what does it matter? Shelley didn't win against Danielson when they did actually wrestle anyway. Shelley points out he only lost to a cradle, while Rave got beat to a bloody pulp when he faced Danielson. Rave points out that he was never submitted nor was pinned in that match. He says, I got screwed in that match, while you got beat, and you got beat again tonight. Rave points out, Shelley points out, hey, you got beat too tonight. The two start really arguing when Nana tells them to cut the camera, and we get our typical from the Milestone Series to be continued ... graphic. So teasing some dissension between the two. I like that they're trying to, sell that, they're trying to make a story out of the idea that, Alex Shelley didn't make Unscripted 2, not because, TNA forced him to pull from the show, but because Jimmy Rave canceled his plane ticket. So.
Yeah, I don't think they really go so much further with that.
No.
Because Shelley isn't around for much longer.
Yeah, he's on his way out. But either way, that was Best in the World. The original, obviously, Ring of Honor would run this name multiple times, but this was the original Best in the World. And you know what, man? I was thinking, watching this, by the end of the show, I was thinking, we saw a show on this year called Tag Wars. In some ways, I would call this show almost a Tag Wars, because even though it was only headlined by 2 tag matches, those are 2 huge tag matches. They take, when you add in entrances and post-match, probably over an hour of this 3-hour show. They were both great. They were 2 of the better tag matches I think we've seen in Ring of Honor up to this point. Like, this really was a show where, between those 2 matches and the Jimmy Jacobs, Jimmy Loves Lacey, all music video, like, to me, this is a home run show just based on those 3 segments. Like, there's lots of other stuff on the show that I think is also good, but not special. Stuff that you liked even more than me. But I think those 3 things alone, those 2 main event matches and the Jimmy Jacobs music video, like, instant recommend right from that.
Yeah, I definitely like the undercard a lot more than you, to the point where, like, I would say wrestling match quality, consistency wise, and like, when you account for the peaks, like the best matches, this, and I'm not saying overall with if you factor everything that makes a wrestling show good, but just that alone, this might be the best ROH show like we've ever reviewed so far. Like, in terms of like the level of match quality for each match, plus the quality, like the high points of the main events. Like, I think it might be. Like, so when Gabe Sapolsky started hyping this, when he was watching the raw footage, he said this was better than Manhattan Mayhem. I do not think overall it was better than Manhattan Mayhem, because that show had like pacing and storylines and heat and like a flow to it and like a through line
and a setting, being their first show in Manhattan,
right? The atmosphere and like that, it was super consistent match wise too. Maybe even a little bit more consistent than this, but the best matches on this were definitely better than the best matches on that. And I think that the undercard for me was close to as good. So, I know you didn't like the undercard as much as I did, so like maybe that's not true for you. But I think this really does hold up as one of the better ROH shows we reviewed. The only thing that's holding it back from me actually just completely committing to that is it did feel like it obviously wasn't a B show, right? Like it had like a huge main event, but it didn't feel super eventful either. You know what I mean?
And the two great matches on top, they're not really I guess
they're not matches that were built to, yeah.
Yeah, the strong Evans, the strong and Evans versus Briscoes tag, you could say is kind of building to strong Aries versus the Briscoes, but yeah, there wasn't really any build up to that. And the Marufuji Kenta tag is building to Kenta Danielson stuff down the line, and it is building to when they come back to New York, that Joe Kenta Danielson 3-way. But even that one, going to your point, because it feels so Kenta Joe centric and we never get that singles match, watching it back now with hindsight, it does feel almost like a little aimless, because it's almost like some of the Joe Low-Key segments we saw a year or two before, where it's like watching back now, we know they're kind of teasing things we're never going to get to see.
Yeah. So in some ways, this obviously is not even close to a B show, but maybe you can make the case that it's an A- show. And that would be the only thing holding it back from me saying this is a high contender for best ROH show so far. Because I think we're going to see the next few shows that we review are going to be big shows that are also at least as good as this one, maybe better. So whatever distinction this show gets for match quality, which is real, it's a great show.
Yeah.
I think it will kind of be blown out of the water within a week of this show taking place.
Poor show. But
it just was in a weird position because it's right before the biggest weekend in ROH history.
Well, the show is kind of in a way just like you were saying earlier with the Jack and Roddy versus Briscoes match, which is it's kind of state of the art or hitting a new level for its time, and
then it's obsolete a week later. Yeah.
Yeah. So in a way, the whole show's like that. Yeah, that's a really good point, I think. But, and I also think you make it go, even though I'm not quite as high on the undercard as you, I think you describe it really well, which is we've seen a lot of Ring of Honor shows that have had one or two great matches, but then the undercard's kind of up and down. And we've seen some shows like Manhattan Mayhem where it maybe doesn't have that one, although I think we might disagree on that, but that one match of the year level super great match, but it's just
which was your match of the year on that show again? Was that the tag title match?
Maybe I don't think that there's a match of the year contender on that show, but it's good up and down very good up and down the card.
Definitely, but still my favorite ROH show, so I'm not knocking it.
Yeah, but going to your point, this was a show where you did get even I, as someone that's down on it, nothing on the show is bad, and there's a lot of good. And so you got a real consistent undercard, and then you also get the two great matches on top. So you kind of get the best of both worlds in that sense. So yeah,
exactly. That's sort of what I was going for. Yeah.
Yeah, that's to get both together, because it's not just the consistently good or the really high end on top. It's both. Yeah, that makes it best in the world, perhaps.
And this is why people love 2006 ROH, because we're going to get this way more often. I was surprised watching in 05 how infrequently that sort of thing took place, where you got the real consistent undercard plus the great top matches. I think what 2006 is kind of known for is it combines what was good about 2004 and what was good about 2005 and kind of takes it to another level. I don't know if that will bear out, but this show is a good sign that it might.
Yeah. And yeah, it's really exciting, bodes well for the next few shows. But plugs, if you want to get in touch with us, through the years at gmail.com, that's THROH for through. We got, again, that great email that tipped us off about the getting into the video wire era of Ring of Honor, and Twitter at Trevor Dame, at Mayor MGF. And and next time on the show, we will be covering the first of Ring of Honor's 3 shows in their first ever WrestleMania triple shot. That would be Dragon Gate Challenge. The Dragon Gate boys are back. They're in greater numbers than ever before, Matt. It's not the Dragon Gate Ring of Honor themed 2006 show that people remember, but you know, it's an interesting card. It's got Daniels and Joe on top one more time. It'll be real interesting to cover that. We are now into one of the biggest weekends in Ring of Honor history. We will be starting with that next show. So should be a blast. Until next time, have a good time. Have a great time.